Welcome back to the Comics Aficionados right here on Thinking Critical YouTube, the best damn comic book webcast, podcast, live stream that you're ever going to find. Going to have some fun, honest comic book debate, talk about all the news and rumors going on. We're going to talk about the rivalry between Marvel and DC. There was some controversy over King Conan #3, as well as Woman Without #3 or Woman Without Fear #3. They may have spoiled a big event or something like that. Josh is already laughing at me. Apparently his internet's doing better this week, but the man of the hour is Eric Canetti. Let me put this up for you, Eric. Let's look at this thing. This is great. Very nice. Arc Athena 2 is launched on Indiegogo, fully funded already. Congratulations, sir.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who supported so far. If you haven't done so, you can go to Indiegogo and type up Arc Athena 2. It should pop up for you. Thank you ahead of time for your support.
Ed, so I hear that you're almost done with all 6 volumes. You've got like 2 or 3 years worth of work done already.
Is that what it breaks down to? That's intimidating to think about.
You're already ahead of the game. That's awesome.
No, it's a mini series and it all ties into each other. So I've really got to keep up the pace. I don't want to be the weak link in the pre-production chain. My colorist is super fast. My letterer, my editor, just all there, just waiting for me. So I don't want to be the guy that messes up the whole, the whole momentum of it.
I know exactly how you feel. I'm normally the guy that ruins the Comics Aficionados, but they can't replace me. That's the good part, right?
Right on.
You're somewhat instrumental to it. We've got Lane Kramer saying, awesome trailer. Eric?
Thank you, Lane.
Very nice looking. That was phenomenal. We got Joe Corallo here. Joe, I owe you an apology.
True. What'd you do this time?
On a recent video, I was talking about some of the portrayal of gay men in comic books, about how I think a lot of them are caricatures. And I mentioned that I didn't think that there were a lot of accurate portrayals of my good friend Joe Corallo, a gay man. And they said, Joe's gay? You outed him, Wes. How could you do that? So if you want, I will rescind that comment and put you back in the closet, Joe. I didn't realize.
That's fine. I'm currently in the closet, so.
Well, literally.
Yeah.
I thought Joe was pretty open about this thing.
I think so.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I don't know, like a stamp or something. Everyone will know. That way you don't.
Yeah, well, we could get. Actually, I'm not
here
even.
on the channel. Never mind the stamp. That's a bad idea.
Danger, Joe. Danger.
You weren't hoping for monetization on this stream, were you? Is that all right?
We got Doc here. That was out of the question.
Oh yeah,
he'll do something. We've also got Gabe Hernandez from Weird Science DC, as well as Comical Opinions. How you doing, Gabe?
I'm doing just great. Thank you for having me. It's a streamy kind of day. We just got off another stream with Carrie talking about an hour and a half about nothing but My Hero Academia. So I dedicate that stream to Doc, and I'm looking forward to getting all the positive reactions out of that.
You know what's crazy is all the criticisms Doc has about comic books and things that would fix them. They're all readily available right now in manga at a cheaper price.
Don't care.
Yep.
Don't care because
that is on brand. You have to appreciate it.
Yeah. I don't
What's
give a shit.
What's the problem, Doc? What's the problem? Manga is the savior of your superhero genre. What's the problem?
Because it's boring.
Oh boy.
Goodness. You have This is the same guy that says Star Wars is stupid and Lord of the Rings. I'm not even going to say what you said. I never said Hobbits.
No, I said that I don't give a shit about Star Wars. I never said it was stupid. I just said I don't give a shit, and it's
Let's not talk about what you said you were going to do to poor Frodo. Okay. That was not appropriate for and all ages content that we're supposed to have here on the channel. Who else we got? We got Josh from BatmanNews.com as well as PopMyCulture.com. How you doing, Josh? We missed you.
Thank you. Yeah, work should be slowing down finally after tomorrow, and I should be back to normal as long as my dog doesn't decide to, need another cast on his leg. But other than that, I'm good. I'm here. I'm happy to be here.
Your dog broke his leg?
He ripped his MCL tendon and he chipped part of his tibia. So I had to take him in for surgery on Thursday to get that fixed. So now he's in a giant green cast and he's got the cone on his head and he's miserable.
Was he playing frisbee or something?
He was just roughhousing with another dog. So,
Was the dog like 5 times bigger than him? How do you?
Yes. He's like a Min Pin Chihuahua mix, and the other dog is a American Stafford Terrier. So
you're much bigger.
So he thinks he's a pit bull, but he doesn't realize he's really the size of a mouse.
My little guy, he typically wins those fights. So that's all I'm gonna say. He's pretty
Pure
pretty
determination, not by
pure determination.
Yeah.
Also, turning the larger dog's legs into a fucking pretzel by just running figure 8s through them, and then they just fall over.
Pretty much.
Hey, learned that from Star Wars, Doc.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
The battle for Hoth that you're going to do that at.
How you doing, Doc? How are you going to get us demonetized today?
Whenever it comes
Let's
to
not do it yet. Never mind.
Jason Aaron.
Me.
Let's pace
Jason
out
Aaron.
demonetization. Let's pace it out.
It'll be Jason Aaron.
Yeah,
that'll be the segment to watch out for. How you been, Doc?
I am good. Hopefully my internet sucks a whole lot less than it did last week.
Well, we recorded a little bit earlier for our This Week at X-Men, and it seemed to go better. But yeah, your internet sucked last week. I think you're just trying to go to the script club anyway. You had some singles lying around, burned a hole in your pocket.
No, actually, I just wanted to go back upstairs and never mind.
Read some X-Men comics, huh?
No, the girlfriend was upstairs, so
well, there you go.
Let's
keep her PG.
X-Men comics.
Read some X-Men.
Oh, is that what we're calling it now? Okay, that's
yes.
what we're calling it
Well, let's get into the
X-Men
show.
comic
I
in a
guess we
long
got the
time.
introductions. We got a couple of outstanding comic book creators here. We got a world-class artist. We got award-winning editor. We got great comic book critics as well. And then we got Doc.
Yep. And you got just my giant asshole face.
Somebody's got to bring the terrible opinion. So let's talk about what happened to the DC Marvel Comics rivalry. It feels like there's not a lot of juice to it right now, Gabe. Obviously, you're a critic of DC mostly, but you obviously do Marvel as well. I don't know. Does it feel like they're not really going at each other? They're just kind of, I don't know, treading water or something.
Oh, not at all. They're not going at each other at all. I think this came up in a stream a few weeks back, maybe perhaps. But what both DC and Marvel lack is they lack a front man. Somebody who's a harker and a barker for making sure that their wares are being made public and made exciting and made interesting and made marketable to the public writ large, not just people who follow them on Twitter, but just the whole corpus of the buying community. This is what we're doing. This is what's great. Now, I liken the separation, or actually the relationship between Marvel and DC, very much similar to sports teams. I know that's a kind of a really trite analogy, but in some respects, it's the truth. It's when you have a rivalry between two teams that they just stop caring about each other, stop competing with each other, stop trying to one up each other. They not only they don't lose against each other, the public loses, because there's a lack of energy and there's a lack of enthusiasm about trying to do better, about trying to excel. And to be honest with you, I kind of miss the trash talking a little bit. I do. People kind of make it seem like that's toxic and that's not healthy. It's like nonsense. Trash talking, especially if you're going to continue along that sports analogy, is how people kind of get under each other's skin. It's what goads that spirit of competition to say, I want to push my art a little bit better. I want to push my writing a little bit better. I want my sales for the 15th version of Batman this month to be a little bit better than what Marvel is doing, and vice versa. I'd love to see a healthy competition, partly because it kind of gets the public
emotionally invested in that rivalry. And if that makes people more comfortable, let's use the word rivalry instead of competition. Get them invested in that rivalry to feel that energy, to feel the anticipation and excitement. It's like, okay, how are you going to hit them? Okay, how are you going to hit back? Who's gonna do better with sales on Aquaman this month? Who's going to do better with sales on Black Widow that month? And just kind of push each other. When the rivals just sort of go in their separate corners and just sort of sit there like a lump, the public feels that. And I think that's part of the apathy of what's affecting the industry, among many other things. But that lack of just kind of enthusiasm, which are trying to do better, is palpable. And I think everybody picks up on that.
For you know, I do also liken it to sports, but not in the way that you're doing. The way that this is, it's the owners are all in a big fucking club. You're not in it, and they let the fans fight. They have the companies themselves have zero rivalry, and then they just let the fans fight. They're all sitting out around in the fucking owners' boxes, hanging out and drinking beer with each other. But
but it's PBR because they don't got any money, Doc.
Well,
Come
yeah,
on.
I mean, look, like for all their
It's not
faults,
even in the Beast.
for all their faults, Joe Quesada and Dan Didio generated an actual rivalry because they did not like the other company, or at least publicly they would shit on the other company. Now you don't have that. I mean, and you know what? You generated those early 2000s, from about the first decade of the 2000s was very, very good for growth and for recovery post crash. It generated a lot of creativity. It generated a lot of cool events and moments that creatively have been important because of the outward rivalry, the vocal and public rivalry. Joe Quesada shit talking DC, Dan Didio and Paul Levitz shit talking Marvel regularly, and it as well as have creators that were exclusive to one company. Now everybody works for both companies. Why in the fuck are they going to have a rivalry? They start shit. If Matthew Rosenberg right now is when he was back at Marvel was shit talking Marvel, he gets work occasionally from them. There's a handful of these creators that are working for both companies. You're never going to see Vita Ayala shit talk one of these companies. She's going to draw on a fucking paycheck from both. When you're getting paid by both companies, you have no incentive to have any sort of rivalry with the other company. You have no, if you're writing a Namor book and there's a Aquaman book out at the same time, you have no incentive to do better than the Aquaman book, because at best you get the same page rate to go over and work on Aquaman. At worst, now you've made the other company's character that is basically the same look worse, and then they don't hire you because you made their character look bad.
What do you think, Joe? Do you miss the DC Marvel rivalry? I know I do. I think it would help everybody out.
I miss aspects of it. I kind of want to add to some of what Doc was saying. I think like what was going on in the 2000s was both good in that, but also was the beginning of the end, because once Mark Grunwald died, once Jeanette Kahn was out at DC, once like Quesada and Levitz were really elevated at the other companies, you did see it get less playful and a lot more like aggressive and personal. I forget who it was, if it was Levitz or Quesada, who called the other one like a corporate whore. Like they used the word whore. Like it was like, it got really nasty. And that gave like a spike to that, but it was also kind of like the beginning of the end of people kind of being like, this is getting out of hand with, the personal attacks. But also we now once you got into like the 2010s in particular, there's no real incentive to have any sort of playful banter, because if you tweet something about it, Bleeding Cool's going to run an article. They're going to run through every tweet and every statement you said, and they're going to try to, make you look like an ass. They're going to try to make sure that there's drama all around you. So it's like there's no incentive with social media, with all these other things, to even have playful banter. I cannot stress enough how many times I have talked to other professionals who have sent me things that they wanted to tweet or that were hilarious, but they're like, I can't do this, even though it's a joke, even though it's clearly a joke, because it's going to run in Bleeding Cool later that day. And then I'm going to get an email from an editor. There's going to be a talk. I'm going to be talked about in a DM group about this other person. It's just a nightmare. So unless all of that changes,
they can send them to me. I'll fucking tweet them.
Well, but there's a secondary point to that I think is very important that Doc kind of alluded to is, and I think Perch had a video about this recently about kind of the core of a lot of the issues with, especially in the big two, is just a lack of money. Mm-hmm. Now that video didn't really talk too much about how to fix that problem, but when you have an industry that is so paper thin on margins, where most creators have to be sort of journeymen and be able to flip back and forth and from one to the other, there's no really time or opportunity or safety. So if I'm writing an issue on DC and I'm trash talking Marvel, well, I might be up for a project on Marvel next month. And so there's no sort of loyalty, like I'm a DC guy or I'm a Marvel guy, because there's just not enough money to afford that luxury anymore.
Yeah, but to Joe's point, I don't think, things that were said back then, it did get mean eventually. I think it lost the spirit of fun competitiveness, but I don't think we're in that sort of, space anymore, right? Everything is taken way to the extreme. Context is at zero relevance. It's just whatever it is that you can hype up for that week. I mean, there's a reason why we're going to end up talking about a handful of things we're going to talk about today, but context is completely, and I think actively, taken out. So the spirit of that, the level of competition, sort of just like tongue-in-cheekness of it doesn't carry very well these days, especially not 280 characters, right? And especially if somebody's actively trying to start drama, and that's really tough.
I can tell you right now, I've done the best YouTube videos of my life ever since Perch attacked me in Arby's. He elevated my game. He elevated Arby's game. He really elevated the entire YouTube community by going after something that we all love, like Arby's and their Big Montana sandwich and their wonderful, side items. So I don't mind a little trash talk. Perch came at me personally, and I feel like I rose to the challenge. Why can't comic book publishers do that, Josh? I want to be able to talk smack about Doc about how great DC is at the moment and how they're just eating Marvel's lunch, but I can't even do that because they're not rising up.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you're in this situation where you are working for both companies, like a lot of these writers are, you do have personal relationships with these people. And I do think you'd be more inclined to kind of joke around. Like, it'd be very easy to be like, if I'm writing Moon Knight, be like, oh, this is the best Batman book on the stands. And then have Chip Zdarsky be like, no, my book is the best Batman book on stands, referring to Daredevil. And then follow up with wait, come back in 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and then promote his book. You could still do fun stuff, and they don't. My whole thought process during this whole conversation, and I've agreed with a lot of what's been said, is mostly just I don't think there's a lot of competition going on between the two because they don't have much of a leg to stand on. And I know that's, I mean, it's you can sit here and go we're releasing 97 books this month. 2 are good. I mean, that's kind of where we are.
Sure.
I had the best meet or... Go ahead.
Eric grew up in Wildstorm. Obviously, you were in there. You're in the bullpen. You're sitting down by all these other young artists, these other up-and-comers that Jim Lee is identified as the best up-and-coming artist. That raises your game because you're seeing what this guy's doing next year. And you might ask him for a little help here and there, but once you see what he's done, you want to do something better. You want to be the guy that's illustrating the Wildstorm book that's the best. And once you see what the competition is.
there's a reason, and Jim had a pretty cush corner office, but that was like for show, you know, like if there were any sort of executives or people who walked through the place just to take the tour of Wildstorm, Jim's office, or anytime that they shot, like, I don't know, like videos of him for promotion purposes, that's where they shot that video. But there's a reason why Jim sat in the bullpen with us. It's because he wanted that energy and quote unquote competition from the rest of the artists that were in that bullpen. He wanted to be close to where that energy was, because he would see something that Bermejo was working on at that time, and it'd just be like, oh my gosh, it was almost overwhelming because he was working on Batman Hush. So to have Jim at his prime and then still have enough sort of hunger to be competitive was pretty dang awesome. So I understand where you're coming from. You want to put yourself into the mix where it makes you better.
My question is, are a lot of these creators just so, I guess, weak that
Yeah.
that they can't handle competition? I mean,
I
that's what it seems like.
In this case, especially when you're talking about companies, especially when you're talking about Warner Brothers, and especially when you're talking about Disney, everything kind of trickles from leadership on down, right? So if you have you can play around and talk trash to somebody, but at the end of the day, as long as it comes from a level of professional courtesy, and not necessarily that you don't mean it, but you have a respect for the other publishing company, I think that trickles down to the rest of the troops, so to speak. But I don't know if you have the right kind of leadership to be able to make that kind of joke and actually have it so that nobody gets offended. So to your point, Doc, I don't know if they have the, psychological grit to deal with that kind of back and forth.
They don't. Like,
fortitude.
yeah, we live in an age where even if you just say, I did not prefer this book, people get offended and upset. And it's, why would you say that? Why would you post that publicly? Like, well, I'm getting paid to post my opinion, so, suck it.
Right.
I mean, probably the only thing you can do at this point that's relatively safe, and I'm not even sure that would qualify, is if just on a monthly basis, the official Marvel or DC, or probably it's going to be Marvel, would just like repost the Comic-Con monthly numbers for the previous month, and just circle.
No, that'll make them sad because they didn't get their participation trophy.
Well,
just a question mark.
I mean,
where's DC on this list? And just leave it at that, and just post that.
But part of this too is there's also just been a fundamental change in what people view as success in comics. Marvel and DC are not the goal anymore. The goal, I mean, not like Netflix, but also, Scholastic, HarperCollins, Penguin Random House getting a more traditional graphic novel type book deal. So they're not like, and part of this, beyond that, like to build on that, is there's a lot of chaos within both companies. I think you have to have a certain level of pride and reverence for where you're working to want to stand for the books you're working on.
That's a good point.
We hear constantly from people working on books like, oh, I'm working on this book. Oh, how many issues do you get? I don't know. When's the last time you heard from your editor? I don't know. Oh, okay. So have you sent more pitches in? Yeah. When's the last time you heard from them? 6 months ago, a year. Where is the motivation for you as a creator to be like, I'm so excited that I'm working on this Marvel or DC book? I mean, we just saw the Greg Smallwood thing a few weeks ago.
Yep.
Why would Greg Smallwood be like, I'm working for the best company doing the best books?
Oh yeah.
Why would you?
There's no one place where this is fucked up. It's literally just top to bottom. The whole thing is fucked.
All right, Doc. We do got some super chats we're gonna get to, fellas. They've queued up. Definitely appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Callum Lyle jumps in. I'm calling Kevin Feige Mr. White Guilt from now on. I'm sick of his crap and his interviews. It's just diversity, Brie Larson, diversity.
That's a weird combo move.
but that particular thing, Kevin Feige, You know, I don't know him personally or anything like that. I guarantee you, he's reading from a script. He doesn't care one way or the other. PR is just like, here, read this. And he's like, yeah, talking point, Disney. And that's it.
In
Well,
fairness,
I'm pretty sure Kevin Feige can afford not to care.
yeah, he can afford not to care. Additionally, look, I mean, let's be perfectly reasonable here. Kevin Feige is so disconnected from actual, like, on the ground sentiment from consumer. The only thing that he knows is what Hollywood, his agents, his production house, and the publishing house have told him.
I completely disagree.
Are you
Go, John.
serious? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm
Go.
just saying, like, if you, I do agree he's getting talking points, but I think Kevin Feige is more plugged into what fans, general fans, we can't say comic fans because there's not enough of us to support these numbers that these movies get. But I think he's more plugged into what general fans want than most producers or executives in Hollywood because he keeps delivering, and they're the only studio that keeps delivering.
But he also greenlit and produced Eternals and Shang-Chi and a Black Widow movie that was 8 years too late.
Oh, I agree.
I think
that was not his.
take
Yeah, look, all I'll say is Black Widow.
Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
So Black Widow, the timing of it releasing, not most of these movies and the time when they're releasing was not him. He wanted a lot of these characters in phase 1 and phase 2. It's been in interviews for years. That's not him. Is he doing like a diversity talk? Yeah, but I do think he's also going about it from more of a like, I think we can play an impact by having these type of characters. If you go and you watch the Assembled documentary about Hawkeye, he speaks to diversity in terms of Echo and what she brings to the table. And it's not even that it's a female character. It's like, hey, we have some representation here of someone who's disabled and strong. It's the same thing that people like to see in Barbara Gordon in the Batman comics, and that people got pissed once it was taken away. That's all he leans into it with. He just leaves it at that. He doesn't dive in and keep going on about, oh, she's the best character ever because she's this or that. It's just like, we needed some type of representation. She delivered. It's an actual disabled actress. Here you go. But no, I think
these kinds of like $1 million movies, you know, it's
Yeah.
like you look for opportunity space, right?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I'm not saying they're leveraging diversity and inclusion. I don't think that at all. But if there is an opportunity there that makes them go, oh, we could, you know, put more butts in seats, and it takes this kind of dedication to whatever level of storytelling, great. But unfortunately, it doesn't do as well as their highest paying version of their movie. So people go, see, look at that thing that you injected that into this version of the movie, and now it didn't do as well. And you go like, well, actually, I don't know if that has anything to inherently do with it. That script was poor, you know, the pacing was poor, the direction was like mediocre, and people have had 10 years to get used to the experience of a Marvel movie. So nothing is really going to surprise them at this point. You take something like, oh gosh, I don't want to say like maybe Captain Marvel, you take it back 7-8 years, it may have done better by way of reception because people weren't used to it anymore. Like, it's clouded by the I'm not apologizing, by the way, because I really think Captain Marvel as a movie narratively is poorly paced. But, you know, it's clouded by the thing that is the Brie Larson. But I don't, you know, those movies don't suffer because of diversity. They suffer because they are produced poorly.
Yeah.
And there's a different layer to. I'm sorry, I know we're trying to keep on time, but there's a different layer to that. Is we've gotten I mean, collectively, maybe on this panel, most of us, maybe not, but just, you know, social media in general, have been so at each other about, you know, race swapping. Is this good? Is this bad? Is it diversity push? Putting, you know, agenda before story, and all these arguments going back and forth. Even if you're just a spectator to it and not necessarily involved with it. That when a story comes along, like I'll give you an example, Shang-Chi. I thought Shang-Chi was fine. It wasn't the greatest movie in the world, but I had fun with it. But I hear all these people just kind of arguing, well, was this and this, that, and another thing, and then you were trying to push this and push that. Is we tend to get, because we're so used to seeing all this bickering happening nonstop, we kind of get jaded and cynical. So then when something just kind of simple and fun comes along, you're kind of not able to allow yourself to just have fun with it.
I just
because you're
dislike
so busy.
Shang-Chi.
You're waiting for the argument. You're waiting for the push.
I dislike Shang-Chi because it was a terrible movie that deviated completely from the source material.
All right. Let's get back on track here, fellas. Cal Lyle always starting trouble here. Well, he's going to follow it up. He did have a follow up. I'm sorry for being on the nose, but if MCU echoes powers come from the spirit of the wind, that's when you know Disney effed up again. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Well, the current Echo is the avatar of the Phoenix, so you got a long way to go before you're going to get there.
I think he's talking about in the MCU, which would be in that Hawkeye show. A little bit different. We shall see. Although after what happened with Pocahontas this week, I think they will try and veer away from that. We got Wolfstein 3D. DC and Marvel feels like the Jets competing with the Jaguars. Who is worse and gets the number one pick? It's sad at this point.
Well, that's commentary on an industry as a whole, right? You can't bring in top talent. I remember talking to, and I won't get into details, but I remember talking to an editor behind the scenes, and they asked me to do a cover for one of their more recent events. And when I quoted them what it would take for me to step away from my own sort of, responsibilities, the stuff that I've been doing on my own time that's limited to me, I feel like, and if I could read between the lines of the emails, they were almost surprised by what I quoted them. But I thought that in as far as if you believe in your IP, given the restrictions of your budget, you would really push for something like that. But it's clear that if you have a cap, if you have a ceiling of what you're willing to pay a top-end creator, and by the way, I'm not included in that term, but a top-end creator, you're going to get what you're going to get. So there you go. I mean, if you're going to pay arena football, using this example of the Jets and the Jaguars, if you're going to play arena football rates, you're going to get arena football players.
Yeah, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very true. Thank you so much, Wolfstein 3D. We got Cal Lyle. It'll take a bulldozer to push Dan Slott. Oh,
correct.
It's a fat joke. That's not very nice, Cal Lyle. What are you doing to me? We got King KDI. Marvel don't kick down on IDW, Ahoy, Boom Studios, or Dynamite, and DC is that low. DC aren't competition anymore, and they haven't been for a while. I don't know, Gabe. You're the DC guy over at Weird Science. They haven't been down for that long. They were out by means of their production compared to Marvel. They had more inclusion in the top 50 than Marvel did normally up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, depending on which numbers you look at, yes. Okay, so there's just not enough time all day today for the stream lasted 6 hours long to talk about all the reasons why the big two are different now than they were a year and a half ago. If I look at a general tone of decision making, it always seems like DC is doing catch up decisions to Marvel. For the very longest time, Marvel has been the top spot, and DC, I think it was Paul Levitz or somebody said, we know we're going to be number two, and there's nothing wrong with being number two. Kind of that kind of mentality. But we fight very hard to just see number two, and number two is easier because you don't have to try and fight so hard to keep that number one mentality. Well, I think they're starting to slip back and dip back into the number 3 and 4 slot, and the only thing that's keeping them where they are is two things: volume, right? Just because the complete, just gross volume of different titles that they're just spewing out onto the market. It's definitely quantity over quality, and I don't think anybody would argue about that. The second thing is they're really riding the coattails of brand recognition.
I just love seeing.
I agree.
Yeah.
I just love seeing them do the exact same things that Marvel did 6 years ago that didn't work. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's like DC has had a fucking head trauma and just keeps making the same mistakes. It's great.
I'm sorry for laughing at head trauma. That just cracked me.
It is.
I'm an evil person.
Did somebody smack that company with a fucking lead pipe?
Well, maybe Bendis did.
But Wes, on that point though, I mean, you did call me on me about the DC part, but I also cover Dynamite, Zenoscope, Source Point, Mad Cave, all these other studios, or not studios, publishers. what you will find, and I see this across the board almost exclusively, in the sheer volume of people that are invested in storytelling outside of the big two goes up exponentially. People are so used to, when they talk about Western direct market comics, they think Marvel and DC. But Marvel and DC have the lock on artists. I mean, if you look through
Barely.
barely, but with some exceptions. I mean, generally speaking, a Batman book will look good. A DC book will look good. I mean, the coloring's there, the line work is there, the lettering is on point, and depending on who's editing it, all kinds of things. The comic will look good, but the storytelling is bleh. I mean, it's just not there. It's just lifeless and empty. You go outside those big two, you'll find much more investment from creators to tell stories.
Yep.
I'm not talking about writing, I'm talking about telling stories. But what you lack there is generally the art quality drops because it's too expensive. That's not always the case. I'm speaking generalities, but you'll find that a lot. So what's happening is DC is just holding on simply by virtue of, I can draw a good looking Batman.
Yeah. On top of having Batman, right? Like there's a credit built into a title like that, in which somebody will give that title a chance because it has a recognizable IP to it. So yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, normally I would stay far, 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 far away from Tom King, just because I've been bit too many times. But, and we'll talk about this later, he came out with Killing Time, and first issue was great. I mean,
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, but the only reason I would have given Tom King a chance is because it was a Batman title. If it was like some creator-owned thing, I probably wouldn't have ever touched it.
Or you could look at the fact that Tom King has historically done good #1 issues and shit the bed completely afterwards. So why should that change now?
Well, Doc, when you're a comic book critic, you have to read comic books that you expect to be bad.
You also have to recognize trends.
Well, yeah.
And when the inevitable thing happens
review.
every time, you don't keep making the same mistake. Did you have a head trauma too?
I don't know, Doc. You're still reading X-Men. When was the last time X-Men was good for a year? Exactly. Thank you very much. Wolfstein 3D.
Yeah.
To actively engage in a rivalry, you need to have some muscle to flex that the other DC and Marvel are all out of shape, chubby.
Good point.
Dad bod, screw you, man. That's a direct attack on Thinking Critical. I've got a dad bod, and I'm proud of it. I'm not going to show it off. I am a little embarrassed at the same time.
Do the truffle shuffle. Do the truffle shuffle.
Josh is doing, or DC are doing good with Batman. That's just the only character they're doing good with.
Yeah, but if you
Clear
said
that
this,
they
like,
know it, right?
Yeah, if you said this 6
clear.
months ago, it would have been a different story. Like, So are they really? It goes back. There's no consistency here. We're good with Batman for now, and even then, it's good. It's not great, but it's good.
But even those rates, like we were talking about at the big two, they haven't been that great in a while. I mean, I talked to one of the writers that was working at DC at Vertigo back in like '93, and we were talking about if I were to do something over at DC again, talk to them like what are the rates basically right now, and I told them, and they were just like, that's what I was getting paid in '93.
Yeah,
I talked to independent publishers like they don't have a lot of capital. They're shocked at how close their rates are to Marvel and DC, even on art.
So why are the rates so low? I mean, they have these. If you talk about Marvel and DC, they're backed by large corporations with significantly more cash flow.
Because
They have
they
a
are
operating budget based on their revenue.
they're
That's
publicly
it.
traded.
The perfect example is I was talking to a professional on Twitter in regards to those low rates. DC at one point were in the same building as the merchandising arm, right? So he had 2 assignments. One was for comics. He turned in his pages, and he took a meeting at the merchandising arm. It's like 4 or 5 doors down the hallway from them, and they asked him for what his rate was, and apparently the head of that merchandising arm immediately apologized to him and said, hey, I'm really, really sorry. We actually pay better on this side of the world, which goes to show there's a huge disconnect and sort of like a weird misunderstanding, but also a proportional pay depending on which side of that, product you're landing on, right?
The merchandising revenue is like 5 times higher than the comic books.
There you go.
Well,
There you go.
also you can look at it this way. The reason why the rates are still low is because the creators that are getting paid those rates now have driven the actual unit volume down to that.
Yeah.
Sorry, you get paid based on you sell 1/3 of what you sold on that what that title sold in 1993. You get 1/3 of the inflation adjusted price of 1993. We're still gonna keep raising the price to keep our profit margin above that level, but you're not getting paid 1993 rates to sell 1/3 of 1993 units.
I think I want to disagree with that a little bit, simply because let's pick on the sports team analogy thing again. If your wide receiver is terrible, you don't cut the starter salaries next year. What you do is you find a better one, and you find one that you find a better one that you recognize is going to cost higher. So you find a better artist, you find better writers at a better rates, because you recognize that when you write better stories and you produce better product, that should, in a right thinking world, should lead to more sales.
Problem is that everyone that was NFL talent level went to go work in something else, and the only thing left is arena football talent.
That's not the case though. There's plenty of fantastic comic book artists and writers, but they are limited on the amount of their budget, which is likely based exactly on what their revenue is. If you want to produce 60 books a month, this is the money that you have to operate with it. If you want to bring it down to 30, you still got the same amount of money, but you have to bring in the same amount of revenue as well.
Yeah.
So it's just the margins that they're working with.
It's a problem that has been growing for 25 years. And it's going to take at least half that length to fix it. And that's if you're willing to operate at almost zero profit or loss for that period. And none of these companies are willing to do it because they're all publicly traded and they have to show profit year over year.
We've got Common Sense says the rivalry are in the movies. People criticize new Batman movie as dark and gritty. It reminds me of people criticizing the early DCEU that led to the Joss Whedon. I don't know. There certainly is some rivalry there, but the MCU is absolutely destroying the DC movie. It's not even close.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I mean, I haven't seen the Batman. I know we're going to talk about it later. I've heard great things. I was afraid it was going to be a little too dark, but I'm hearing visually it's dark, but tonally it's not as dark as people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, the main criticism I'm hearing is that it's probably about 30 minutes too long. Yeah.
That's what I've heard most of all.
No, we'll get into it when we get
there.
All right.
Did David
got
Gordon...
Callum Lyle here, off topic. If I was at Marvel and announced a standalone series about Angela, but she doesn't know she's an Asgardian and has amnesia and hunts demons, but falls in love with a guy, would that upset people?
It would upset the 4 Angela fans.
Oh, what do you think, Joe? Has this got potential? I know you love to do comic book pitches.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the problem is, is there a market for it, or are people going to care? Marvel hasn't done enough with Angela since getting her. It was really like a spite move from Neil, and she's just kind of like been existing with just a little bit of a splash when she got there, and she's kind of been shelved more or less since. So maybe.
Give her back,
but they'd have to put a lot into it.
Well, let's see. Maybe she'd fall in love. Who knows? Might have a future. We got Jordan Fugate, also Jordan Fugate. If the free market has taught us anything, competition typically makes things better. DC and Marvel are lacking that push to be better. I think that's really what it all comes down to, Doc. I know you've been champing at the bit to jump in here, but the free market and competition are always good. The winner is always the consumers.
Yes, that's historically what it's been, but it's not going to, because they've essentially it's the fucking uniparty, but for comic books. I mean, I don't want to get political, but it's the same thing. I mean, it's a whole bunch of people in a club that you're not fucking invited to, that all get to make decisions for, unlike your life, this is your entertainment. And guess what? They stopped giving any shits what you actually want. They did. They stopped giving any shits. They are no longer, they exist in a post sales world in their heads. So no,
All right.
nothing matters.
We got Kenneth Dalley here. Good morning, panel. Happy belated birthday, Wes. Hope you're all well. Joe, enjoyed your review of the Batman for the most part. I would have Marvel DC rivalry when they make better comics like the 80s. Well, thank you very much for that. And I'm glad you enjoyed the review, Joe. That was a lot of fun talking about the Batman.
Yeah, no, that was fun. And I'll add, kind of to the last super chat, but also sticking on the topic of the competition. They almost do things in the vein of competition, and then they drop the ball. And not to pick on DC some more, I feel like the receipts I could give of all of the money I've spent on DC, I should be allowed to say whatever I want about them at this point. But one thing that they did fairly recently that again was like you almost did it and then you fumbled it, was the DC Talent Workshop. The whole point of that seemed to be, we're gonna snatch that up and coming talent from Marvel or anywhere else. We're going to cultivate them, and we're going to have the next generation of talent. So what did they do? They get them through the workshop. They don't prioritize it. An anthology of their work comes out like a year late, and they don't sign any of them to exclusive contracts. And then what does Marvel do? They hire Rosenberg.
Well, in
what
fairness,
did you guys do?
In fairness, everyone that came out of that workshop was terrible anyway, so it's okay.
Philip Kennedy Johnson came out of that workshop.
Yeah.
He's doing good. He got his first kind of breaks over at Marvel. There's actually been quite a few. I think Williamson, was he in there? Or was it Tynan?
It was
one of them.
What, Josh?
I think
Tynan was a
Student
student
of Snyder's.
of Snyder's, but
Snyder,
not in the workshop. Yeah, but yeah, like just stuff like that. It's like, what are you doing? It's like in some aspects, it was like, so you gave people some baseline education on how that worked and allowed Marvel to come in and be like, thanks for teaching these people how to write and or draw or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like,
Right,
what?
right.
What?
And that's what I was gonna say. Is like writing wise, it was meh from what I remember, but there were like probably 4 or 5 artists in there that were excellent. That I was like, dude, I cannot wait to see these guys on a regular series. And then, nothing.
Or they could just do the smart thing, which is what Marvel did in the early 2000s, was wait for Jim Lee to cultivate talent over it. Oh wait, Wildstorm would still have to exist. Fuck. And then just steal everybody from there.
There's nothing wrong with having a talent pipeline from a smaller publisher. That's what all major companies do.
Yeah, except for but see, this kind of brings up DC is fucking dumb, because DC owned those talent anyway, because they were already owned by Wildstorm was already owned by DC by the time Marvel started poaching literally everyone.
Right.
Well,
hindsight's 2020.
And the way that sort of worked too is you used to poach talent from smaller publishers. The way things have gone over the past decade, that's not the case as much anymore. I mean, that still happens, but now what's dominating a lot of small publishers is you get a breakthrough there. They go to the big two. They do a little bit of work there for a few years, and then they go back there as the big fish in the small pond. But that cycle's been going on so long now that all of these smaller publishers are just filled to the brim with big two kind of talent. So now you can't like mine there in the same way they used to be able to a decade or so ago.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Dynamite as an example, they've got like Dan Abnett, they've got Christopher Priest, they got all these writers coming in. Ron Mars, I think he's got a John Carter series coming up here pretty soon. You go over to like Paul Levitz did something with Valiant last year. You got all these creators that they're just
Cullen Bunn's at Valiant right now.
Yeah. So
Fred Van Lint.
what you're seeing is that basically these I mean this in a positive way. These seasoned creators are like, I don't need to deal with all that nonsense from Marvel and DC anymore. They just go down to smaller publishers because smaller publishers basically let them do more creative stuff.
I'm
and
sorry,
by and large, a lot of that stuff is better.
You pronounced C-list wrong.
But and to add to Gabe's point too, when especially if you're working at the big two, you're a writer there, maybe they're paying more for the script than some of these smaller publishers. Some of these smaller publishers are paying half or less for scripts than what you're getting at the big two. However, when you factor in the amount of time, you will hear from people at the big two, I know definitely at DC, like, oh, well, I had to do 3-4 rewrites on the script. And a lot of these smaller publishers, you do one draft, you get a few notes, boom, 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 and that's it. The time sink ends up working out to the point, like I've talked to some writers who are like, I end up technically making more money at these smaller publishers because I have to put in so many more hours at the big two to incorporate all of these changes they make me do along the way.
You don't have to worry about tie-ins. You don't have to worry about crossovers. You don't have to worry about, I have to make sure the story hits this point because the streaming service is doing this thing over here that's coming out at the same time as this promotional backpack that's coming out over here. You're just like, I want to write a simple, clean, fun story. And then to your point, with just a few edits, and then you're done. So the per hour, the per hourly rate, not the per script rate, but the per hourly rate works out better because you don't have to spend days and weeks rewriting and recasting. Why do I have to include this character? Well, this character is coming up on the Netflix show, and we want them to be synced in, and we want them to make an appearance in the comics, so we get some kind of synergies. Like, but that has nothing to do with this character. That has nothing to do with the story. Well, we're working in anyway. All that is gone.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier, and as far as like the IP being the big draw, but I think we're getting to a point now where that's not as a big draw anymore. Right, like these aren't the big titles that are coming out of mainstream comics aren't as enticing as they used to be. Sure, they still carry a little bit of weight, but to Joe's point, if I could work on something that belongs to me, as opposed to something that belongs to somebody else that doesn't have as much punch as it used to, especially if you're going to labor behind it due to editorial calls or, in a way, the coordination nightmare that you're talking about, Gabe. Like, there's not much there to bring me over, especially if you're not going to pay me as much. I'm talking, strictly as an artist now. Like, there's no draw for me to go over there anymore.
I'm here conversation on two fronts. One of them is on the creative owned stuff. Like I just want to make my thing and then either have you help me publish it or go to Indiegogo or Kickstarter or whatever. Sure. I'm also starting to see increased conversations about public domain characters.
Yeah, right.
So Batman is approaching that. They're not there. You got years to go. Superman's approaching, not there years to go. But I'm seeing a lot more people start to scroll through those databases that people have compiled of public domain characters, and you start to see characters like Miss Fury and some of these other characters that are now starting to get more mainstream attention. It's like, how'd you come up with that? It's like, no, this is public domain. Anybody can write that character.
Right.
And then
we do need to get back on track. We're a little backed up here. We've got Ideator. Arby's isn't a real thing. If roast beef was such a commodity, there would be more roast beef vendors as competition. They have good fish sandwiches. You've never heard of Rax, sir? Does Rax not exist? Perfectly good.
Someone's ever been to Philly.
Cheesesteaks.
Yeah, there's a lot of great roast beef sandwiches out there. You go to any country diner. Arby's is where you go if you don't have time to stop in. You want to get something. Arby's is fantastic.
By the way, I believe there is still a Rax somewhere out west.
Absolutely, because Rax is a fantastic chain. But there was no reason to get personal, sir. Is all I want to say about that one. LK says, I want a rivalry that would get us more amalgam. Yes, we all would. We definitely would like some more DC Marvel crossover stuff. If they're not going to go at each other head to head, you might as well collaborate and do some crossover stuff that would get a lot of people into the industry. We got Kenneth Dowling. Shout out to Callum Lyle on his Kevin Feige super chat. Great conversation starter. Listen, that was a great conversation starter, but it's basically like throwing like an acorn in the middle of 4 squirrels. You know what I mean? There's no way they can not do it. Like, squirrel, it's an acorn. They just go after it. It's hard to pull these guys off of that one, but absolutely. Thank you so much to everyone for supporting the channel. Even when we get into a little Kevin Feige side conversation, this is the Comics Aficionados. If you've been a fan, you know we're going to go off script every once in a while. Reckless Drucker says, Young Ripper point of race swapping shows they only have validity in whiteness. I could see that point of view where the only characters that matter that you can put on the big screen are the characters that were white to begin with, and you have to race swap them to get another character there, I guess.
I've heard this conversation before, and the level of validity behind it, if you only look at it through a very narrow lens, which is you take a Superman character that has a lot of brand identity, you have you take a lot of customer trust equity behind it, and you say, okay, now we're going to switch it up, as opposed to building out something new from a business strategy. That makes sense. It rarely has any longevity to it. Short term, yes. Long term, there's few examples that you can point to where that's actually true. And in a way, at least for that moment, it's damaging to the brand.
Yeah. Well, I'd also say, like, in instances like Falcon, what makes Sam Wilson Cap not work isn't the fact that he's black. It's the fact that they tried to make him Captain America.
They changed the character.
They changed the way he acts. They changed his brand. Like, you tried to make him he's already developed as a character. You don't need to do this. You just need to give him the opportunity.
Yeah, grafting on the identity of someone else does not help in any way.
No. Yeah, we just had the same situation with Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Rand just like, I don't want to be Iron Fist anymore.
Koya, you're a better Iron Fist than I was for 5 minutes.
Yeah, he just like, I don't want to be Iron Fist. Here you go, whatever. And then they bring in a new Iron Fist, and it was already an established character. It was sword.
But the story is a swordmaster story. It's not
and he doesn't. And he's not even he's not even Iron Fist. He acquires his power because of the things in his. But that's not how you become Iron Fist. You have to get the dragon with the dragon.
Look,
what doesn't
what is
matter,
going on,
Gabe?
Marvel?
How long have we had the fucking Ghost that they're still trying to tell us is Ghost Rider, that doesn't have the fucking spirit of vengeance, that drives a car and has no connection at all to any of the Ghost Rider lore, yet they're still calling him fucking Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Apparently that is a personal issue for Doc.
Got it. Well, one thing about race swapping and all of that recently that it makes total sense, and I haven't seen enough people point this out, is they're having people who are like critical or whatever of Gordon being played by Jeffrey Wright in the new Batman movie, but they're missing the point. The point is HBO is doing a Gotham PD spinoff. They've worked with a pool of actors. Jeffrey Wright was a breakaway success from shows like Westworld. They were looking at a narrow pool of people who they could get to carry a TV show for them that they've worked before, and Jeffrey Wright fit that bill. I've seen some people say go pretty hard in the paint on that, but that is just how business works.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely something you have to keep in consideration. We got Cal Lyle. Tom King will F it up. I believe he's talking about Killing Time. Catwoman walks in. I want my wobby wife to burn me. Josh, it was a good comic book. Killing Time was sweet.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't want to pray. Look, and I will defend Tom King on this channel time and time again about what he's done that is good, because he's done good work. But lately he has not. And now I'm it's always a great start, and then it always just turns quickly. So
you know what? Never mind. That one actually will get you demonetized.
The only Tom King issue
Nope.
number one he wrote that I could tell it was just going to be bad for the beginning. Well, actually, there's two of them. Heroes in Crisis number one, I just didn't think was good from the beginning. And Strange Adventures number one, while it was a good comic book, I could see where they were going. I was like, this is going to be bad, folks. So, yeah, never trust Tom King, but I guess you got to read him. He's still a big deal. Ideator page rates, being what they are disrespectful to creatives. You don't have a thing. If your creatives don't produce it, it feels like poverty. Obviously, one of the things that we could talk about here, Eric, is you're a comic book artist. You came up with Wildstorm, but you're not a professional comic artist anymore. You're doing this as a hobby because you had to look somewhere else for a profession.
That's true. I think you sort of compensate the talent that's available within that compensation. That is my firm belief. Unless there's a few examples where it's like those people are really, really hardcore about comics, because if you think about the level of craft that they're applying to it, they can do so much better anywhere else. And the reason why they stay is because they love comics, and I have to respect them for that. That's not something to scoff at. But if you take that same exact talent, I'm talking about the exceptional ones, if they can graduate to a better paying gig, I always encourage them to do so and keep comics as a hobby, because I don't know how you can make a living out of it. I just don't
You
know.
see what happened with Joe Bad, one of the great artists of his generation. You thought he was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
He just kind of disappeared.
I mean, he was the guy, right? But he realized there's a ceiling in comics that was right above his head, So as far as compensation was concerned, and at the end of the day, Joe was significantly more passionate about starting up a video game company. So that's where his path took him. But if you just even the playing field, or have an understanding of what the playing field even looks like as a comic book publisher, but to your point, Wes, you only can pay based on the revenue that you make. I don't think if anybody's paying attention to their bottom line month in, month out, what they're getting paid to sit behind a desk and do what they do, I don't know why they wouldn't side eye, a Netflix deal or a video game deal or an animation deal,
I do have a question for Eric. Okay, so we know that there's been that the big two at least have suffered some degree of like PTSD after like the Image exodus when it comes to artists, and that's why they kind of went like far away from really promoting their artists over the 25 years since.
Do you think that somebody gives me that reason? I don't know if it's true. Is that true? Can we all say that that's that actual reason why they're diminishing or at least not highlighting their artists is because of that overreaction?
I've heard of that overreaction, but it's the strange part of it is it's sort of an overreaction that's been passed down.
Yeah,
almost like a family tradition.
Yes,
that may have been the truth in the early '90s, when that whole thing went down. But then since I've heard a few editors who kind of make those statements, but that's because that's what they were told is the way we should view that situation.
Yeah,
so it's almost like it's almost like taught behavior rather than some conclusion somebody came to on their own.
Well, but I guess my point is, do you think that post like Brian K. Vaughan leaving for television, Mark Miller going to only do creator owned and then selling to Netflix, Kirkman leaving to go and become an Image partner, do you think that they're Brubaker going to only do creator owned work? Do you think that they're starting to suffer a little bit the same kind of PTSD with writers? Where that's why they're hiring shit.
Yeah, I think the moment I don't right now. This is just opinion, and there's a lot of things that could help substantiate it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. I think based on what I've seen, I don't think mainstream comics is a destination point anymore for creatives. I think it's a stopover to build up a brand and a name, and then if there's an opportunity to move on, often they do. Unless you become part of like the top 5%, of creatives in comics in which you are compensated pretty handsomely, and even then, there's always something that you're working on the side. It's never the I'm in comics and I'm staying in comics. I think it's always just it's not the destination. It's just like, oh, here's a tourist spot. This looks kind of nice, but we're actually heading towards this space. And I know that sounds cynical, but I feel like there's enough things that are happening in mainstream comics, current mainstream comics right now, that help substantiate that. So to answer your question, are they experiencing PTSD and are they doing that now with writers in as much as they used to with artists? I wouldn't be surprised if that were true.
Okay.
I think it's a situation too.
Hey
where
guys.
Sorry.
We have got an entire show planned out. We've got to get through these. I know everybody wants to chime in on every single topic, and I get that. Come on. I already sent you a private message to every one of you. If you didn't see it, I sent it a while ago.
I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, that would help.
I've been like the quietest person today.
I know, Josh. It just happens to be the wrong time. Yell at Doc. He's your fucking neighbor.
You
That
were
guy,
gone. I was
whatever.
trying to carry the conversation because you were gone. Carry on. We got Wolf Scene 3D here. Woo.
Wes and Doc are right. Rates are down because units sold declined by approximately 50% over the past 20 years. Since they still try to flood the shelves, the ratio of books that are effectively subsidized went up. It would be interesting to look at the numbers, as far as the amount of units that they're actually moving, but the flood the shelves strategy, I don't believe has been entirely effective. Josh, what do you think?
No, I completely agree. It's not working. You know, this is the equivalent of having like your discounted brand retail stores where you have, you know, you're just shipping as much product as you can and you're putting as low of a price point as you can and you're hoping you sell enough to make up the margin. That's kind of the strategy of comics right now. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for clothing retailers. It doesn't work here.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Let's move the show along, Wes. I don't want you yelling at me again.
That wasn't.
I kept that short and sweet for you.
No, you're all right, Eric. It's Josh's fault. It's Josh's fault. So don't
It
worry.
is. This will be the Josh's fault show. I'll take it.
Thank you so much for supporting the channel, Cal. While I wouldn't mind trying to elevate Angela, but also Kamala Khan, but have her powers similar to Green Lantern in a different costume. Kamala Khan is certainly held back by her power set game. She just looks kind of stupid.
Yeah, she's a Reed Richards knockoff. But if you look at the promotional art and some of the special effects early previs on the Disney Plus show, it looks like they've modified her power set to look more like kind of like these light-based crystalline kind of constructs instead of stretching.
Yep.
So I think the Disney Plus show took the hint and said, this looks stupid, so let's not reproduce that. But then again, there you go. The one platform is not recasting, but sort of reinterpreting the character different than what's in the comics. And so somebody sees that show and it's like, oh, I want a Kamala Khan Ms. Marvel comic. Let me go over here and see what they got. It's going to be like, why is she all stretchy?
Well, we'll get like a 5-issue miniseries or something that completely retcons her powers or whatever as the show's coming out or something stupid like that. Like,
yeah, but it's her. I mean, she had a good start. Her run started well, and then we got into the whole Guantanamo Bay thing where she was in charge of a prison, and that kind of scuttled her character for a lot of stuff. But her power set was just not that interesting. It just wasn't. I mean, she just looked like a Reed Richards knockoff. Okay, but the amount of marketing push they put behind that character, to the detriment of marketing their other titles, it's just so confusing to me. And then eventually when you get to the point like, okay, now we have an opportunity to put that character in front of a larger, broader, more mainstream audience, then they modify the character to kind of take away what they actively have been pushing in the comic. And then you just sit there from a marketing perspective like, I don't understand what you're doing anymore, Marvel. Why are you trying to make this more complicated than it needs to be in the first place? And I think a lot of people are just going to be kind of weirdly confused by that. Not in a deeply confused way, but just like, are these two different characters? Is it the same character, or are we trying to do different things? And I think Marvel is just working against themselves, and they're their own worst enemy in that case.
Yeah, if you look at that Avengers video game, it turns out it's a Qualicon game. I think people don't like the bait and switch. We got Nerdy Girl Creates, Carrie, a regular member of the panel here. I think Marvel and DC have gotten too big for themselves and think they are invincible. I don't know, man. That's Invincible's. What's that? Image Comics? I don't know, man.
I was going to make
That's
that
a whole
joke
other
too.
brand.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe.
I mean, I interact a lot with the, because we get comp reviews and comp issues for reviews and all that stuff, and talk with all the publishers. And I've been telling them, I've been beating this drum for a long time. If you start up a Marvel, not a Marvel, use a superhero universe, the market is yours.
Yep.
Marvel and DC are lax. They are taking it easy. They are writing the brand recognition. They are writing the IP. They are just, it's exactly what we talked about earlier. They're not showing enthusiasm for what they're trying to create. They're not trying to one up each other and trying to push for more. So if you get a smaller publisher that comes along and wants to invest and really put their backing behind creating a superhero universe with interesting characters, with character-driven stories, stories with emotion that progress and evolve these characters, the market is hungry for that type of stuff. And I think if you put it in front of their face at the right place at the right time, Marvel and DC are going to have some trouble on their hands keeping a hold of that top spot. I mean, and it's easy for me to say, but I think the market is there, but they just need somebody to fill that market space. If they can satisfy the customers with something that really works, like Eric Canetti's comic that he just posted a very fine trailer for early in the stream, people want more of that. And if you give it to them, they will come back for more. And Marvel and DC better be careful, because then they're sitting back on their heels and just being full of themselves and thinking nobody can take their top spot. I don't think that's going to stay that way permanently if they're not very careful.
Goblin says, Doc, what about Carter Slade? He's not the spirit of vengeance. Doc's gone. We'll go back to that one. Lade Craver, so how well did that vid on the article do for you, Wes? I imagine he's talking about the one where that guy called all of you guys mouth breathers with terrible dollar store microphones.
Yeah, I started to say that our title should have been whatever they called us. Like what did he call you, Wes?
Me?
Yeah.
Called me a saint. He said the prince of thinking critical, and then his cabal of mouth breathing, microphone dollar microphone still having morons.
Like Gabe, Don, their names have just been mouth breather. Joe and Eric, what was it? Washed up talent or whatever it was.
Washed up talent.
It's not a pricey enterprise over here at the Corrala residence, but it's something. Damn it.
Am I the mouth breather? Is that me? Am I the mouth breather?
Yeah, we're the mouth breathers, and Eric Canetti and Joe were the washed up creators will never make it in comic books.
I'll have you know I spent $20 on this headset, so I don't want to hear any complaints.
This is ridiculous.
I feel really bad for that guy, man. Really,
the
really
creators
bad for
that have
dude.
been on my channel, like they've actually sold comic books. Nobody had ever heard of that guy, so
no.
I'll put their reputations up against it. And, if we're a bunch of mouth breathers, so be it. Kenneth Dowling, love Joe's explanation on the casting of Jeffrey Wright. It's the same as filmmakers cast the same actors in their movies. Yeah, because they're the level of accompanist. There's also a good possibility that Jeffrey Wright has like a contract with Warner Brothers. They're supposed to produce so much stuff with him, and they thought he was the right choice for this. It was going to be on television as well. There's going to be that Gotham PD spinoff.
Yep.
Listen, that guy's good. And
he's a great actor.
Freaking phenomenal actor. One of the best.
If he's a right fit for Gordon, if he can carry a scene, if he can carry that role and his part of the movie, I'm on board.
Off topic, if you haven't seen Westworld, that's a great show. Westworld was great.
Yeah.
Actually,
I'm
Neo
gonna
Star
excuse
Production
myself in 5 minutes, Wes. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I genuinely feel bad for Kamala Khan as a character. Seems like all of her potential is actually squandered by pandering and executive meddling. She got a good start. They kind of went off the rails there, Joe. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? You got to do like Philip Zimbardo type experiments with kids running prisons. So
that's
so you're leaving us, Eric?
In 5 minutes, I hear the tornado.
Oh, I hear
upstairs.
you got the family stirring. I gotcha.
That's right.
Are there any comic books that you think people should be reading this week? You got any comic book recommendations for us?
Should I just pick? No, I not any new ones. I just went back and bought a crap load of stuff of the stuff that got me excited about comic books, and there's not one in immediate memory that makes me go, that's the thing to do. Oftentimes, it's the comic book you guys recommend that I go like, oh, I want to read that. So you guys are way ahead of the curve as far as recommendation is concerned.
What's in your pile of stuff that got you excited for comics?
I went back and picked up everything omnibus related for X-Men, especially that Claremont run.
Oh,
honestly, purely out of selfishness, I wanted to see why people don't use thought bubbles as much as they used to. Did that just did
I
that
thought it was
just fall out of
Casada, right?
favor?
That said thought bubbles were stupid and like banned
Oh,
them.
there you go.
No, that was
there.
that
It
was
is.
that was
Those are
Axel
the two.
Alonso.
Those are the two, Joe.
Oh, it was Axel
That's what I
Alonso.
thought.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love those
Alonso,
books.
Alonso got rid of the thought bubbles. Casada got rid of the editor's notes.
Mm.
Two terrible mistakes.
Anyway, yep.
Common Sense has a question for you, Doc. What do you about Carter Slade? He's not the spirit of vengeance.
I really, literally have no idea who the fuck Carter Slade is. Oh wait, he's the old guy. Oh yeah. I think he was possessed by a different demon, but
Yeah,
he
he
was
could be
also
Ghost Rider.
pre-Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider. Wasn't he he was originally like the Phantom Rider, and then they retconned him into being the Ghost Rider?
I don't know. Common Sense also says Ghost Rider 2099 was not the spirit of vengeance, nor in any connection until the reboot, and he met Johnny Blaze. So in your face there too, Doc.
Okay, that was a 2099 universe. That doesn't even
Eat
count.
it. Eat your lunch.
Yeah,
Been
and
served
most
to you by Common Sense.
and most of the villains in X-Men 2099 weren't mutants either. They weren't fighting. They had no connection to. There's a reason why the 2099 universe, other than Spider-Man, was mostly a failure.
All right. Wasn't Peter David? That guy is great. We got Kristen
until
Bliss
Warren Ellis.
from right here in the Philippines. Says Western comics are going to have a strange death like Filipino comics, all black and white, no buyers. It sucks. Filipino comics, Eric would know better than I. Used to be enormous here. You comic books all over the place. You can't even. Only can go to one city and get a comic book now, Eric. Got to go Manila.
Really?
Yes.
That's unfortunate.
I have to get
That was
on a
some of the
plane.
best- That was some of my best expense of my weekly budget was buying Filipino comics back when I lived in the Philippines.
Yeah, it's just all gone now from the culture here, and we miss it, unfortunately. And it makes being a comic book reader very expensive here, unfortunately. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, Chris. We've also got Mr. DC Comics question: what is the definitive, iconic, and heroic versions of Batman and Superman from which all others should be judged? Oh wow! So I'm going to go. Me personally, I'm going to go with John Byrne's Superman and Man of Steel, and then I'm going to go with Denny O'Neil's Batman when he kind of took over. What do you say, Josh? You are the DC aficionado.
Just to kind of take a jab at Wes, Batman the Animated Series. But no, seriously, I do think you get and this is a serious answer. I think a lot of today's writers could go back, watch that series, and as far as even Superman to a degree, you could get a good fundamental of who these characters are. I agree. John Byrne, Superman, probably your best place to start. That's definitely kind of when they shifted the wheel a little bit, and he did a lot of work to lay the groundwork for the new direction. I would even say for this new age Superman that we're kind of getting as a family with the kid, like go back to Tomasi and Gleason's run, because there's a lot there that kind of infuses that element. Batman, Denny O'Neil, Grant Morrison. I think those two runs together. Munch. Go back and read Doug Munch. Like, the dude got so many Batman stories. I think he's written Batman as a character more than any other writer. Between Detective Comics, Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight, and all the little one-offs he did. But he is so grounded in just street-level heroism and vigilantism that's going to be my answer. Sorry for the...
All right, what about you, Gabe? You're a DC guy for Weird Science. Where do you think are the definitive, iconic versions that they should go back to for Batman and Superman?
I'm going to agree with basically everything that Josh just said, with one take back exception. And the take back exception is Batman the Animated Series is pretty darn good.
I was going to say,
I think people don't. I think because it's a cartoon, not enough people give it credit. Those are some phenomenal Batman stories. I mean, you may not be able to kind of be on board with the art style, maybe as an example, but if you look at the tone of Gotham as it was created, the way Batman operates within that environment of Gotham, and how he and his rogues gallery of creators, that Mr. Freeze episode is just top notch.
Absolutely.
The Two-Face origin story is top notch. That's where you get Harley Quinn
one of the best newer creations for the Batman mythos of even in print. That came from the animated series. So I mean, you can make faces, but and then paired with that, Superman the animated series was also pretty great. It was a juxtaposition of the dark tone of the Batman series, and then they made it sunny and light. It was more of a kind of a mid-century sci-fi retro feel to it. You were dealing with Parasite, one of the best representations of Parasite, one of the best representations of Lex Luthor voiced by Clancy Brown, and all that. So people are like, it's a cartoon. What about Tomasi? What about Munch? Yeah, fine. They're all good. But those, if you were to say, I want you to use this as the baseline model for every Batman and Superman story we write going forward, and if you said use the animated series, I'm on board.
Yep.
All right. Doc says, I personally dragged this channel to the #1 toxic in 2022.
Fuck yeah. I am going to get you that goddamn World Toxicity Championship belt, sir.
Nice.
Yeah, what do we have to do to beat
the crown off
Perch?
my head was disappointing. You know what I mean?
I'm also just going to throw in real quick Marshall Rogers, Steve Englehart with Batman, and Marv Wolfman and Gil Kane with Superman.
Okay.
Joe, we are on a time crunch.
That's why I did it quick. I'm not elaborating.
Yeah,
You guys
Josh,
are fucking with
stop
me.
talking.
I love you, Joe.
Heck, from Cinema Comics, years back, boxing was a high $1 million spectacle. Boxing was on TV everywhere. Greedy matchmaking led to lower views and lost distribution. Boxers didn't ruin boxing, management did. Big two effed up comics. Absolutely.
Always starts
They
with
stopped
leadership.
putting all of the matches people wanted. They stopped fighting each other other than like Oscar De La Hoya. He was the only guy that would fight people.
Lennox Lewis would fight.
There was no good heavyweights.
I know there was no good heavyweights. That's the problem. Any of the good, they stopped pushing the heavyweight division.
Well, once the NFL players started making so much more money than boxers, and they were just as famous, might as well go be an NFL defensive lineman rather than a boxer if you're athletic.
But the point is valid.
Yes.
Everything we've talked about, we keep talking about the writers doing this and the artists going that and jumping around and everything else. It starts with the leadership.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership sets the tone. The leadership sets the pace. The leadership develops the vision. The leadership sets priority. It starts with leadership. It's not a chicken and egg. It starts with the leadership. And if the leadership is not on board with what they're doing, they're not clear, they're not prioritizing, they're not laying the case for how a publisher should behave, nothing else is going to fit in. An artist can't make DC better. The leadership has to make DC better.
100%.
Yeah, most of the good stories we seem to get are in spite of the direction they're getting. Dark Admiral March here. Just read the new Ghost Rider #1 with Johnny Blaze. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I hope they can keep it going. First new book I bought in months. Yeah, it's a good comic book. I like that one. I definitely recommended it. You don't agree, Gabe?
It was more like an issue 0. I think if you didn't know anything about Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider, you'd be lost. And if you already knew Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider, there's not much Ghost Rider in it. Mm-hmm. So I would really put it more along the lines of a 0 issue, where that would have been like, the kind of the lead in to the main story. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't terrible. And they're definitely leaning on the horror on this one. So that's kind of nice. But, I mean, if you're looking for a knock your socks off Ghost Rider story, that kind of, it was more like a prelude than anything else.
Yeah. Kenneth Dowling says, 100% agree with you, Wes. That's because you're a smart man. I really appreciate the support, Kenneth. On Neil's Batman hot take, Denny O'Neil has done more to define and solidify Batman than Bob Kane ever did. Batman the Animated Series is top notch. Kevin Conroy is the best. Come get me.
I don't think that's a hot take. If you know anything about Bob Kane, like Bob Kane did shit to establish Batman. Like it was all Bill Finger. But
if you Batman and the Batman that we have now, Denny O'Neil probably has done more to shape that character than anyone. Just not only as a writer, but as an editor. He was the editor on so many of those books that define the character.
So would it be fair to say Denny O'Neil is responsible for taking Batman out of the camp arena?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, I would say Denny O'Neil went back to what Bill Finger was shooting for when they created the character. So if you've never looked up at the Bob Kane, Bill Finger scenario, look it up. There's documentaries out there. It's really good. Really good.
Pretty gross. You were jumping in there, Joe. Did you have something to say?
No, it's Denny definitely pushed it forward. There were some people who were starting to do that. I think like you read the Neil Adams, like Brave and the Bold, World's Finest stuff he was doing before Denny. Those definitely were heading in that direction. So yeah, I think Denny's the one who like really solidified it. But you could make the argument that there were some people just slightly before Denny who were starting to take the character more seriously.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We have 93 likes so far. We've been well over 200 live viewers for quite some time. If you haven't given us a like, let everyone know that we're having a great conversation here. We would really appreciate it. Now let's move on to the next topic. We've got the King Conan Pocahontas controversy. Eric, I know that you have little time, but as soon as you got some little feet coming down the stairs, you're gonna have to leave. What do you think about this?
I think a lot of drama was made out of a guy who probably brain farted for a second when he was typing out that name and didn't quite consider the impact. I don't think it was actively trying to capture that. That's not what the character is in the comic books, right? Anybody read it?
Yeah, I read it. I read it. I mean,
yeah, he was just using the name. It wasn't as if it's a callback to the actual space that the person that the name came from. It was just like they weren't thinking, and now there's a lot of hay that's made out of it. Yes,
it seems more of a coincidence, than anything. I think it more than likely it seems like he had a name that he thought was kind of cool. Couldn't remember exactly what it was connected to. Just was like, all right, yeah, that's kind of cool. It took from inspiration from a bunch of different places and just slapped them all, threw them in a blender, slapped them all together, and that's what we got.
Yeah.
This controversy, I'm going to call it a controversy because it really is a controversy. I mean, this actually underscores the points that Joe and Eric made earlier about why you can't trash talk anymore. Because every little thing, no matter how innocuous and how just non-malicious in any way, that somebody's just trying to add some flavor or trying to do something just to kind of make the story a little bit more rich, a little bit more kind of interesting, and all of a sudden everybody loses their mind because for like 5 minutes because you're just trying to do something different. There's no ill will. I'm almost 100% confident there was no malicious intent here.
Yeah.
Jason Aaron wasn't trying to do something kind of culturally insulting or anything like that, and yet somebody picks it out. And notice I don't think who was the person who called it out. I think it was
nobody.
No, it was what's his face Arndt, who was on
Chris Arndt
who left, and that was like his very last article before he left, and now he's moved over to Repop. He wrote that article to say some people might not be happy about this, and all of a sudden it's a thing. And so
because naturally somebody was not going to be happy about it, right? I mean, maybe it was stuck somewhere in his subconscious because the guy did end up writing Scalped, and maybe research led him down that space of like retaining that name, without context of where he got it from. Sounded cool, used cool, but I believe that he apologized. It wasn't appropriated in such a way that he was actually writing a Pocahontas story. Yes, I understand it was a dumb move, but certainly it wasn't it's disproportional to the kind of flack that he got from it. I don't know. Like, now starting to have conversations about like only indigenous people should be writing these kinds of characters. There should be a sensitivity set of eyeballs on all of these titles. And you go, well, those sensitivity eyeballs also led you down the path of that Electra Red, Black, and Blood or whatever it is, and they ended up doing this. So it's like it's a no-win situation, and that's why I'm like, this is a big nothing that somebody decided to make into something this week. I don't know. That's my perspective.
Yeah, and I'm not a history schlub by I mean, I know my history, not all of it, but if somebody hadn't pointed this out to me, I would never have known.
Nobody.
I would never have made the connection.
There's like 8 people. There's like 8 people on the planet that would have even recognized that and drawn that conclusion. But you know what? Hey, look, the same way I said about my same response that I had to Bill Sienkiewicz a couple of weeks ago. Haha, Jason Aaron, get fucked. This is the readership that you cultivated, because the people that don't give a shit are the ones you drove off for being racist, homophobic, Nazi, whatevers. So, you know what? You wanted the ultra sensitive readership. You got the ultra sensitive readership. Get fucking burned by the ultra sensitive readership. I don't give a shit Fuck
On
you.
that note, let me excuse myself, gentlemen. You guys have a great
Thank you, Eric.
Sunday.
Great,
Oh,
great talking
great,
with
Eric.
Eric.
We'll talk to you
Well,
guys later.
good
Say
luck.
bye to Wes for me.
Will
We will,
do.
Dad.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you,
chat.
Eric.
Thank you,
Great to see
everybody.
Good
Bye-bye.
luck on
This
your
is-
on your comic.
Yes,
Thank you, man.
absolutely.
Thank
That's
you,
a lot.
thank
Yeah, it's a great trailer.
Hey, and everybody, go back Arc Athena from Eric.
Yep.
It's dope. Let's make it even bigger than the first time around. Because that first issue, I didn't get to tell Eric while we were on the air, but I he asked me for some feedback on it. I gave it to him on the first issue. If you hate the way that everything is so decompressed in modern comics, it was like it's like I fell back into reading a comic from 1993. I was it was like ultra compression or like ultra recompression. It was I had to read it a second time because like my brain, I had to put myself back in a mode of reading old comics. I grabbed out some other old comics that I remember how to read that way. And I read those first, then I reread it, and it was it was perfect. It would have fit in anything before the past 20 years. Any era of comics, it would have fit other than the past 20 years.
I mean, I think this came up in a Slack chat for the other writers that I work with, and we're talking about decompression and everything else, which has gone way overboard. And the 777 model is a lost art. I really wish that some creators, some publishers would go back to just basics. 7 pages for action, 7 pages to give you the story depth and the details, and the 7 pages for resolution, and just kind of keep it simple, keep it moving, keep the story straight. And I think that you're going to have a lot. I think more readers are dying for that non-decompressed, non-decompressed kind of storytelling, because things just kind of drag out a lot. We had a little bit of an internal debate about that with Moon Knight. Oh boy, that's a long one. But back on the Pocahontas piece, when you peel back the layers and see how that situation evolved, I don't know Aaron personally. I don't know Arant personally. To me, it looked like Arant was throwing a grenade on the way out the door. He's like, let me see if I can stir up some drama as I'm leaving here. And
that's all Chris Arant has spent his entire fucking career doing is stirring shit. He is junior Rich Johnson, and he's a fucking clown.
Yeah. I'm gonna segue. Wolfstein 3D has a super chat that was pretty much in line with what I was gonna say.
He says, do you think we'll ever reach a point again where people don't project malice into every action? I hate this cancel culture death cult so much.
Yeah. And then what I was going to say before he posted that was I think we need to start looking at the intentionality of what these creators are doing. I think it's pretty clear that Aaron's intention was not to do something bad or harmful here, and it's being taken that way. But I think in these moments, the way we stop this is these creators have to stop apologizing when they don't do anything wrong.
I swear to God, if I was Jason Aaron, look, I have no love lost for that guy. I think he's a fool. I think he's a terrible writer, and I'm enjoying watching him hoisted on his own petard here. But if I was him, I am a spiteful asshole. I would have waited until the next issue. I would have slaughtered this character in the most horrific fucking way, just to give a giant middle finger to all of his critics. Oh, you think I'm doing something bad? I will actually do something bad now. Yeah,
I don't know if that will help, but
no. It's not about it's
I know.
not about helping. It's about telling people that just want to throw a temper tantrum to get fucked.
Yeah. My take is that like the fact that he came out and apologized and is donating money, like if you want to donate money, that's fine. But if you're doing this as a response to people freaking out where there's a non-issue, then all you're doing is giving them validation to continue doing this.
Well,
and that's my point. If you want it to stop acknowledging it. Like,
yeah.
Or you can acknowledge it and just say, no, you're off base, and then just leave it at that and keep going.
Well,
because the more you ignore them, the more likely you are to hear from them less. But go ahead.
Stop giving culture terrorists what they want. I mean, yeah, like you notice that these always go to, well, if you just paid me. All this is some guilt trip to get fucking work. Every single time. It's either guilt trip a publisher, guilt trip a creator to walk away, open up a spot, give it to somebody else that might be probably less talented, and or the person that you want to be working on that. That's all it is. It's give me money and I will go away. And until publishers, creators, and the rest of and journalists stop giving terrorists what they want, terrorists will continue to terrorize you because you keep giving them what they want.
Well, and it's also a boy who cries wolf kind of scenario, because sometimes things do happen that are just insane and there's no real justification, like X-Men Gold #1 with the like anti-Semitism that was like put into the background in the art. But if you call out every perceived maybe slight every day, every week, like, then no one's interested in doing, like, it makes it
white
difficult
noise
to do anything. Yeah, exactly.
It's like white noise. And I read Aaron's apology. I mean, it seemed, heartfelt, but at the same time, the apology was overly profuse, and then domating. It feels a lot like was it Yubitsumi, which is where the yakuza have to cut off a pinky every time they commit a small offense. It's like, in a way, you don't feel bad because you made a mistake and you did something wrong and you've got to own up to it. It feels more like you are you have to perform an act of contrition to a higher power, which is outrage people. And the dynamic of power is just all off, and it's all wrong there. It's very destructive.
We're dealing with a company right now run by the guy who gave the lady that called him racist a job. What do you expect? I mean,
we've got a couple more super chats. We got Cal Weil here. He says, I would cast that carrot as the Wendigo. They both have similar traits. Also, is her tribe in Western America, so she doesn't speak for all Powhatan who live in Virginia in the East. I have no idea.
The character is written and drawn in the comic. It seemed more kind of Mayan or Aztec.
Mayan or Aztec, yes.
Yeah, it was clearly conquistadors in the backstory and all that. Like it wasn't North American.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that they really shared was the name. There was nothing specifically Native American U.S. about it.
Yep,
it was just a name that had a loose association.
Yeah, as far as the lady that had the problem, that she said some pretty awful things about it. By the way, I'm not really sure exactly what tribe she claims. Common Sense says Donny Cates has more guts than Jason Aaron.
Yeah,
they try to ship his characters, and then when they got mad at him, he told them to go eat it.
Yeah, but I mean, granted, eventually he backed down, but at least he showed a spine for like a couple of days. And then he ran with his tail tucked between his legs. Jason Aaron starts with his default of his tail tucked between his legs because he's a giant pussy.
Perhaps I might have had that sentiment myself. Cal Weil, even if they gave her a Mayan name, people would still complain. Yeah, they tell if it's a fantasy or not real. Plus, sexy, beautiful, drawn women sell. Certainly was a sexy character.
Yeah, the art in that book is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is really great, especially the color. The coloring is phenomenal in that book.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I mean, Osrar for being yet another Stuart Immonen clone is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's
the right kind of texture for a Conan story.
It is kind of weird because Conan isn't typically associated with like North. I think it's supposed to be happening in like Germania or Bavaria or something back in the day. So, but they have been. I have certainly seen American idiot type characters incorporated in those kind of cultures, incorporated in the Sumerian universe. In the past, Cal Weil says, "I doubt that character has donated anything."
No, she wants to be donated to.
It's not to her. It's to the Missing Indigenous Women's Foundation.
I know, but no, she wants to be donated work. That's what it always comes down to. Hire me so you don't make these mistakes that I am going to ruin you for.
But she certainly wasn't calling on herself to donate anything. So
no,
certainly not for that. Cal Lyles also says, and I also bet that Karen hates all Italians who go out on Columbus Day and probably the British and Irish for colonizing. Well, she certainly uses the word colonizer in what she was saying about Jason Aaron, although she has an Italian last name. So maybe she likes Italians. I don't know. I think it was D'Angelo. I don't know. I personally am Irish. I don't care if people go out and celebrate St. Patty's Day. It doesn't mean anything to me personally. What do we got? Your friendly neighborhood banker. Love it when Joe was on. Conan has survived beasts, monsters, and dark gods, but this big blue Tweety bird was too much for our beloved Sumerian.
Thank you, your friendly neighborhood banker.
Conan didn't take the knee. It was old Jason Aaron, so you can't play that one on him. It's a weird situation, Joe. Is there a right way to handle that as an editor? If one of your people that you're editing for had this situation, would you give them advice should you offer a general apology? Should you offer a specific apology? Should you just ignore it? Is there any way to make it go away?
I think it's a case-by-case sort of basis. In this case, no. I think the advice would be don't say anything. In fact, if you have a social media presence, don't do anything on it for a few days or so. And then back to business as usual. I don't think there's any need for a creator like this to apologize unless, like, this creator was, like, going off at people and being horrifically, like, rude to people, like, you know, personally, like, then apologize to the person that you were doing those things to. But for this, absolutely not. And I think we're slowly getting to a point where more and more people are going to start realizing that and being like, oh, you know what? Social media isn't, like, kind of peaked in terms of what we're going to get out of it. It's in some cases more of a hazard than a benefit. And maybe we should stop listening to certain people and certain things, at least give it time. Like, no one's talking about this already. It's a few days, it's done. If Jason Aaron didn't apologize, same thing would have happened. Like, people would have moved on to the next thing.
Yep.
You know, if this was something that was lingering and kept going on and on, like, I could see maybe trying to think of, like, some way to address it, and maybe not even an apology, maybe even just being like, hey, you know, we hear you, thanks for your concern, kind of thing. But, like, there's no reason to have engaged with this at all.
Robin in the Hood says, let them fight is what I say. Well, he's doing the kaiju line from old Godzilla.
Hey, get fucked, Jason Aaron. Enjoy the readership you helped cultivate.
Sigma Comics says, keep it tuned to Thinking Critical and support the panel. Sigma Comics will be at the Southwest Florida Con tomorrow. Crown Plaza Hotel at the Bell Tower Shops in Fort Myers. If you have a chance, if you're in the Fort Myers area, definitely go there, support Sigma Comics and the other creators there. Definitely want to show up and meet those guys. Heck's a really nice guy. If you like boxing and MMA, this dude knows more than you'll have ever imagined. He was actually he was on a pipeline to be working for the UFC and decided to take a different route. So he's a tough guy. Do not get in his face though, because you might get whooped. That's definitely the truth. Goblin Set says, which barbarian hero from fantasy, sword, and sorcery from Marvel Comics could you find in a fight? Conan or Akon or Goleta in the Wizard Slayer from Weird World?
What
could you find in a fight?
Well,
you can certainly find Conan in a fight. That's all he does. Is that what he's asking there? I think he might have had a mistype.
Well, Marvel doesn't have a real big barbarian inventory right now, so I don't know. You'd have to dig way back on that one.
Mandalorian Scum. That's a damn good handle. I appreciate that, sir. Hey, guys, Wonder Woman books consistently lack strong, interesting storytelling. Which writers currently at DC do you think could do the right job? This is a question for Joe. We've talked about Wonder Woman. What's the problem with the character? You said she needs a better rogues gallery, but I also believe that she needs a better caretaker. What's the writer for Wonder Woman?
Oh God, it's so tough because I'm trying to think of who now could write Wonder Woman. Because here's the problem: I think there are some strong writers who could potentially do a good job. However, everyone who tries to tackle Wonder Woman, something happens when someone gets a book like Wonder Woman, where they just become awful their instincts are just horrendous. They try to rehash the same like handful of stories that every single time, I think the Mariko Tamaki run was probably one of the better ones in recent, history. I mean, because it was very much a straight up just, Wonder Woman's gonna fight, like Count Vertigo for 2 issues, and we're gonna set up seeds for the next couple of issues and these issues. It felt like a competently put together comic, but we haven't had an epic or a really solid good run of Wonder Woman in a long time. Because I mean, even when we got Greg Rucka back for Rebirth, it sucked. I mean, it was very much like everyone does truth and I've been lied to and the Amazons lied to me and I'm getting banished from Themyscira again, and we have another Wonder Woman. Yeah, and there's another Wonder Woman around. We made another one, and she's going to be like the real one, and then I have to, do something to show I'm worthy of Wonder Woman, whether it's Artemis or Hippolyta or Nubia or Donna Troy, and something. I'm going to befriend someone, and something tragic's going to happen to them, and they're going to become Silver Swan or something. Then I'm going to have to fight them, and it's all the emotion, and it's just it's just stop. It's just awful.
What do you think about this,
Mm-hmm.
Joe? I think Dan Abnett is a wonderful comic book writer.
Mm-hmm.
He can do nice, long stories based in created lore, but he likes to write really strong female characters. I think he could do a really good job of Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
That's a very good. That's a very good.
Dan Abnett is a good choice.
Good.
I was even thinking Robert
completely
Venditti
agree.
could do just based on what he did with Hawkman. I think he gets that kind of lore and that folklore. You need someone that can do an epic, and if you wanted to go a safer route in terms of cost and unknown, since that's what publishers are doing, I'd say give Genevieve Valentine a shot. I think she's shown that when you give her time to tell a story, she crafts a really good, detailed, layered story.
I say whoever you pick, you gotta. They need to come in with 3 things. 1, a guarantee of at least 4 years on the book.
Yeah, at 100%.
A second would be at least 0 new allies, characters that are good characters or allied characters. 0, no new ones, and about 25 new villains. I mean, hell, I'll settle for 10. And then you slowly work them all in. You have no expectations for any of them. See which one of them really hits as being, because I think somebody needs to build an actual arch nemesis but you can't just decide this is the arch nemesis and 3 weeks later they're in their first comic. Oh, that's their new arch nemesis. We're always going to pretend like they've been. You have to let it happen organically, and you do it by throwing about 10 different villains at the wall. Figure out which one works best.
Caleb Lyle here.
Good.
Last off topic, there's a cartoon called Trece. It's based on a comic based on Filipino folklore, and it's only 6 episodes. I have not seen that, but I might have to go check it out. My 6-year-old is learning Tagalog, obviously, alongside his English. You could probably learn a little bit from that if it's actually in Tagalog. So thank you very much for the heads up. It is going on a list of things to go into and look at because he does love him some comic books. We've also got Cal Wild. DC, give Nubia to me. I can do it.
I would also, for Wonder Woman, get rid of Themyscira. Take it entirely off the board for 4 years.
That could work. I mean, Pete Tomasi and Dan Mora doing Wonder Woman would probably be solid.
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning to talk about that a little bit about why people say, well, she needs a better rogues gallery. The problem with Wonder Woman, the way she is, it's not her fault. It's just the creative teams that have been put on it. Is she's already at her pinnacle. She's already at her peak. She has nothing to strive for. She has nowhere to grow, nowhere to evolve into as a character, nowhere to kind of progress. So the only challenge that really lays before her is whatever opposition stands in her way through whatever characters are developed as a villain. So if you came to me and said, okay, so who are your Wonder Woman villains that everybody would know right now? You have Cersei, you've got Cheetah, you've got Dr. Psycho, and maybe Maxwell Lord. That whole liar thing was weird. I'm not sure if that's going to stick with anything. But I mean, there are more, but that's kind of where you tend to settle in as far as repetitive people who have really kind of established themselves over the course of time. The only one in there that is, if you think about where Wonder Woman is, I mean, she's the peak of Amazonian fitness power. She's got all the tools and she's got all the magic and everything else. The only one that really kind of stands in her way as an obstacle is Cersei.
Yeah.
She's really not as big a deal as people think, and I'm not even sure why she even appeared in the 1984 film. Dr. Psycho is just like basically a little pervert running around. Maxwell Lord is a Lex Luthor knockoff. There's really not a whole lot of staying power and depth of posing a true threat in that sense. So that's exactly why when you hear this over and again, she needs a better rogues gallery. That's why, because even of those four, and that's not the only four, but those are the ones that for most people who are into comics would probably remember off the top of their head.
Not only that, but they all look fucking boring.
Yeah,
they all look like cereal box giveaway characters.
The only one who really stands out as a true uber threat would probably be Cersei in that case. And then she's like banished or dead right now or something along those lines. So there's really nothing for Wonder Woman to go after. And then when you come to this latest run with Clunrad, where she was in the afterlife, and then Deadman came back, and then Deadman was exhibiting powers that he's never exhibited anywhere else, which is like some kind of weird amalgam of I can control the dead and possess bodies and do all these weird things.
Yeah.
And the people are like, what? And then she's like, first she's in Asgard, and now she's back, and then she's going after Sword, and then she gives his sword back. It's just they're not really doing anything to the character that either progresses the character to kind of make her new and interesting, or gives her villains that pose themselves as a true threat to whatever it is she's trying to protect. And I think that's the other part of the problem is Wonder Woman really doesn't have a job. Is she protecting Themyscira? Well, no, you have a whole island full of Amazonians, including Hippolyta and guarding the gate, and Nubia's coming up and everything else. Is she protecting Earth? No, because Superman's there. So she sort of has like this weird in-between space that really doesn't define what her role is in this universe.
Yeah, I mean, this is why it was such a tragic misstep for DC to pull the plug on Bill Loeb's 3-year Wonder Woman in Space plan, where she was going to be a space pirate fighting against the Khunds and the Dominators, and really putting her into sort of the unknown. The fact that they cut that to just being 6 issues, they cut themselves off at the knees from having just an evergreen run that I think people would have really liked. And then on top of that, there are other rogues that they just don't use very well. I love Dr. Cyber. I love Devastation. I think Devastation's great. Especially in the Eric Luke run, Devastation was a really formidable opponent. And they just don't. I think people genuinely just forget about them. I think writers and editors don't do the research. A lot of editors and writers that take on books like Wonder Woman don't even know some of these characters exist, and they don't bother to go back and read these appearances to see like, oh, well, this is interesting. Maybe I can, update this and do something with it. So I think there's a lot of problems with that as well.
You know what? Yule's in the chat today, and he has a great idea. We could use egg foo.
Oh, yeah. No, the egg foo is great.
Nothing like a giant egg walking on legs.
Yes.
Lane Kramer is in quite the predicament. He says, I need to decide on a sub. Do I keep Batman with Chip coming in, or do I start Spidey with Zeb Wells? Both starting here in the next month's suggestions. So you're caught in a difficult spot. Those are 2 great writers on the titles. I don't think those will even kind of cancel themselves out, but Batman has the better artists. It's got Jorge Jimenez. You got John Romita Jr., not in his prime on Spider-Man. Certainly he's associated with the character. So if you're an art person, I think you got to go with Batman. But there's so much Batman out there. You do not need to read the Batman book to read a good Batman story. There's so much Batman out there. But in Spider-Man, there's a lot of Spider-Man, but there ain't nearly as much as Batman. So you might need to read the ASM series. So it depends. Are you a bigger
ASM's the only Peter Spider-Man series right now. There's not 3 or 4 concurrent books like there used to be. There's just that one. There's a Ben Reilly book, but that's not Spider-Man. There's a Miles book, but that's not Spider-Man. There's like 6 different Spider-Girl books, and they're not Spider-Man. There's only one Spider-Man book.
Bets right now, though. Which of the books, Batman or Amazing Spider-Man, is going to get a fill-in artist, or the artist leaving the book first? Like, is it going to be
Batman?
I would have said
I would say
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
got to keep in mind, one, Jorge has had a break. He's had.
Oh, he did have like a 6 or 7 month break at that.
Yeah, and the dude is so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So's
if
John
you
get a year break.
Spider-Man.
Oh no! They had there's one year at Comic-Con they had a panel of artists drawing, and in the time that all these artists drew like one little thing, Jorge had like 9 things. He's like boop 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 boop. The dude, it blew my mind. I've seen plenty of artists. It blew my mind how fast he was, and the artists were like, "Dude, how are you doing this and making it look that good? There's no way."
I don't know. I mean, John Romita Jr. and Mark Bagley are absurdly now. Granted, Jimenez is a lot younger.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it.
Yes, I think it's got to be what are you prioritizing? If you're prioritizing art, because I think both stories will be good. They have good writers. They could go with Batman. If you want that Spider-Man book, you're gonna kind of have to go there. There are going to be some miniseries here and there, but there's not a whole lot of Spider-Man content out there. Whereas you have a ton of Batman to fill your needs. We got Yellow Spider-Man #2. Which Marvel female is the equivalent to Wonder Woman nowadays? I would say it's Captain Marvel.
Yep, just as bland, just as pointless, meandering, and otherwise irrelevant to their universe. Yeah.
So you're a fan.
I think both of them are quality characters that nobody has figured out how to use them in the last 25 years.
I think they've made both of them too OP to carry any weight.
Yeah,
and attempts to push them up.
Yeah, they keep trying to make them matter by making their stories worse and with lower stakes.
Your friendly neighborhood banker says he agrees with Doc. Well, that's a terrible policy. Themyscira is boring. Villains need good designs. Question is, what comic artist can do this? She needs more than trees and rocks to protect. Well, I mean, they had a great Wonder Woman artist. They had Liam Sharp.
Yeah.
He's like perfect for it. Yeah. Now he's doing Exo-Man 1.
Yeah, I would modify that idea a little bit. Instead of taking Themyscira off the board completely, maybe the idea is that, and the part of that kind of the point I was making earlier about Earth is already being protected by Superman and a whole host of other Justice Leaguers, is move Themyscira into the supernatural realm. Like put it on the same place as Mount Olympus or something like that. And then have Wonder Woman kind of guard that veil between the mortal realm and the supernatural realm and do something with all that there. Then you can borrow from all the characters from Greek mythology, and then you can do all, and which has been done before, right? She's against Ares all the time. That's the other one. She's against Ares all the time. Yeah. But Greek mythology is just loaded with all kinds of different characters, supernatural villains, and then you can borrow from other mythologies from around the world, and then just have her build that out there, and then where she has something to do, which is save her island from destruction or overrun by the gods of Olympus, or you can even borrow mythological beings and gods from other cultures in a culturally appropriate way, and then you could do a whole bunch of stuff with that.
Make it like Kunlun, where it's just inaccessible.
Yeah.
They tried doing that with Justice League Dark when Tynan started it, putting her in that position where she was kind of in the middle of these two realms pretty much. And they should have stuck with that, and they didn't.
Yeah.
We got Bradford Hogue. I'm getting that most of the comic writers today are not doing their comic book homework.
No.
No.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I was laughing the other day because I accidentally in my feed got pushed back to that trailer for Children of the Atom with before released, when they were talking about Vita did all her homework in creating these characters, and she really fleshed these out and did all these things, and she really dug in and did her homework. And then I read and I reviewed the entire series, and it was. I'm sorry, I don't mean any disrespect, but it was bordering on incompetent.
No. It needs disrespect.
It was awful. And I was like, this is what you call doing your homework? This is what you this is what you call doing research? It was terrible. It was terrible. And yeah, I see that way too many times. And Joe, even to your point, you said it yourself, is when we're talking about characters that have cropped up in Wonder Woman canon that could be leveraged and brought back and dusted off and do some interesting things with, but they don't even know they're there because they don't do the research.
Yep.
A lot of writers seem to be bending the characters of their story rather than fitting the characters, or the stories rather the character. I agree with that one. Cal Lyle says, my newbie's reason for being an Amazon is her stepbrother was killed by Doomsday and she watched Superman die. Is that a good reason or not, Joe? You're a professional writer. You're an editor.
I don't know. I mean, it's not the worst thing, but like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of that kind of like, I watched someone die and now I want to, do something. Like, I don't know. I feel like
that's a weak motivator.
Nubia is an interesting character. When she's done as, I'm your sister. I have just as much a right to be Wonder Woman and this is you. Like but the problem is, while that is interesting, it's an interesting premise that gets resolved.
It's a villain origin.
And then what do you?
That's a villain origin, Joe.
Yeah, but it's quick. It's what was it? That was done around Wonder Woman 204 to 206, where it's like, I have just the same right to be Wonder Woman as you. You fight, you become friends, and that's it. And then it's like, oh, we still have this character. What do we do with this character?
You make them fuck off and disappear.
Resolution. Yeah. So it's like, so while that's interesting, I mean, there's things you can do with Nubia, but I think somewhat to, and I hate to say this, but somewhat to Doc's point, there are way too many characters in general. And it's like, we need to focus more on making these characters unique and special and give people a reason to want to care. I mean, the fact that, I believe it was last week, DC sent out a PR email on like how to explain to people which Wally West is the Wally West they're talking about, you've already failed.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not even talking about which Flash is the Flash. You're talking about which version of Wally West Flash is the version we're talking about. It's like, you're done. Pack it in. Go home, figure out something, and come back when you're ready for prime time. I mean, that's a disgrace.
Is it Wally or Wallace?
It's Wallace is the other one.
Right.
And then it's like doing that. And it's but it's just like,
who you calling the other one?
It's like, oh my God.
No.
I specifically didn't say which was the other one.
Hey, Kenneth Dowling says, curious, is Kafu exclusive only to Marvel? If a good writer working on an indie company could get that artist, that book would kill. He was absolutely fantastic on,
He's on Iron Man right
and Exo Beta War. I'm sorry about the motorcycle.
Yeah, Kafu, isn't he the artist on Iron Man, Cantwell's Iron Man right now?
He is.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's absolutely fantastic. It's almost guaranteed he's not exclusive to Marvel because they don't have a lot of exclusive artists. But he's doing a monthly book. He's tied up.
Terry Dodson for Wonder Woman.
Ooh,
The Dodsons for Wonder Woman.
Oh, okay, that was another conversation. Bradford Hogue for Wonder Woman. It would help if they fix Wonder Girl Donna Troy. For the Legion, they need to give Hickman a blank check just to come and work.
Yeah, well, with Wonder Girl too, though, it's just like the fact that we're at a point in Wonder Woman mythos where it's like, oh, we should do Wonder Girl. Which Wonder Girl? Donna? No. Cassie? No. Yara? It's like, that's crazy. It's crazy that there are multiple Wonder Girls and you can't just say Wonder Girl and people will be like, oh, I know what character you're talking about. And they can't even go that one or the other one. There are 3. That's so stupid.
Kill one before you introduce another one.
Well,
and then
they
leave them
do.
fucking dead.
But that's the whole point of when people are complaining. Well, the nostalgia and the old days and going back to the 80s. Why is that so great? Because they were future thinking.
Yeah.
They knew that they had to establish generations. They knew, and there were problems. I mean, Crisis in Infinite Earths and all these other things happened because things got a little tied up in knots and balls of yarn and crazy. But what they did do is they established a line of succession. You had Hippolyta, you had Diana, you had Donna, and then you could just basically, when one ages out or gets killed out, you just slot them over. So what should be, if people were paying attention to the mythos that they'd already created and stopped trying to go shiny spoon with just creating something new, is they would have found a reasonable, palatable way to kill Hippolyta or have her ascend to Mount Olympus or something. Then Diana would graduate to becoming the new queen of Themyscira and just lording over that realm of magic and everything else. And then Donna would come on right behind her, and then she would become the world's new Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
The line was already there. You just had to stick with it. But instead of doing that, they're like, well, we want to create a different one over here that's going to appeal to a next generation. And then we want to create a new one over here that's going to appeal to the next generation without doing anything with the other characters. You're adding two.
All right, fellas, I'm sorry. I gotta jump in here because
Josh,
we're not
come
even
on,
through the second topic. And
Stop
we're at
talking,
over
Josh.
2 hours now. So we definitely have to cover this one because last week at the very end of the show, our good friend Kenneth Dowling had sent in a super chat. I apologize it didn't arrive before we ended the broadcast. I said, you tell me what you want us to talk about. We're going to hit that segment. And he said, I want a superhero fight, Batman and Robin, being Dick Grayson versus Captain America and the Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes. Joe, you are a professional writer. Who wins this battle and why?
Time out. Which Robin?
Dick Grayson.
I think Dick Grayson, yeah.
Okay.
Here's the thing: if it was Red Hood Winter Soldier, I think that would be closer. But in this instance, like I gotta go with Captain America Winter Soldier. I just think, especially like Winter Soldier is just he's a pretty brutal character. Cap and Winter Soldier have killed. They mess around with that with Cap. It's like he's clearly killing people in the Golden Age, and then you have the Grunwald run where he's like really upset that he killed that one guy. But like, yeah, I think I gotta go with Cap and Winter Soldier.
All right, Gabe, explain to him why he's wrong.
Well, no, I would almost say that if it was Winter Soldier versus Damien, that might be interesting. That might be interesting because Damien's not afraid of cutting a few throats here and there.
For sure.
Wow, that's tough.
Batman is beaten Superman.
No, the reason I say it's tough is because Batman is the man with the plan. So I would think he would find a way to incapacitate Winter Soldier and Captain America, so that it's not, if it was just mano a mano, just trading punches, it's Cap and Winter Soldier. But if Batman has to is given the latitude to do some sneak attack or jump them when they're not looking or something like that, I think Batman would get the edge on that one. But if it's just like you put them in an arena and just start brawling, I'd probably give it to Cap and Winter Soldier.
I see Batman standing over Winter Soldier with Cap's shield, ready to decapitate him unless Cap taps out. That's what I see happening, Josh. So if Batman's losing, some scrubs like Captain America, you kidding me?
Yeah, look, if you break it down to Batman versus Captain America, I think Batman's going to win. I mean, Cap's got the strength and speed on him, but I do think Batman would overcome him. And I think you're right. I think Batman would find a way to get the shield, which is kind of badass.
Chop his arm off, threaten to chop his head off, and you're good to go.
I'm with Gabe, though. I think in the duo, the way you need to win is it needs to be Damien's instead of Dick, because Dick and Batman are both going to stay reserved. And I think if you do something to Captain America, Winter Soldier Bucky's going to get so pissed that he's not going to be worried about, saving a life. He's like, whatever, we're winning now. Whereas the other two wouldn't
dodge bullets.
But if you get Damien in there, and Damien's going to be like, bring it, mofo, I can chop some, stuff too.
Simple. You let the Winter Soldier kill Damien, and then Batman loses his shit, and Cap takes him out. Yeah. Winter Soldier has no qualms about killing children.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Killing children. He's not this is Nightwing we're talking about. He's not a child. He's a grown adult. He's a superhero.
No, I said Damien.
Oh. Well, Damian doesn't have a problem with killing adults. He doesn't.
Yeah,
have
right,
that.
but you're saying Batman and Robin, so we're talking
With
teenager Dick Grayson.
I
right?
made a mistake. Here's Kenneth. He said I meant Dick Grayson Nightwing. I'm sorry, Kenneth.
Oh, okay.
To be in the fight,
Oh,
if that
that-
didn't come through. Wes and Josh, I really like you guys, and I'm sorry, but your boy Nightwing ain't making it out alive. You're absolutely insane. There's no way Batman's losing another Robin. You know what I mean? He's lost too many already.
I do have to throw in, like, while Batman is a brilliant tactician, Cap has led the Avengers so many times. He is well known for being an expert tactician as well.
He
So-
just
only
says
person
Avengers
better-
Assemble and everyone else does the hard work. Get out of here. Batman defeated Superman single-handedly, probably with one hand tied behind his back.
Hey, hold on. Scott Summers is actually a better tactician than Captain America. He is the best tactician in Marvel, in the Marvel
Wow,
universe.
that's Captain
Sure.
Marvel, Doc. But
I kind of associate Cap to the same kind of skill set and strength level as like Deathstroke. I think Deathstroke.
well, Mr.
is-
DC Comics with you. He says, "Have you all forgotten about the battles of Nightwing versus Deathstroke? I doubt Winter Soldier's better than Deathstroke. Batman and Nightwing all day. You are correct, sir. Thank you."
I think look, the thing with Winter Soldier is it just comes down to an edge, and I think how far you're willing to go, and I think that's what sets them apart.
Winter Soldier is willing to slaughter everyone in that room.
He's not. He's a good guy now, Doc. He
Doesn't
murder
matter. He's
people.
still willing to kill everyone in that room.
No, he was willing to do that when he was like hypnotized and they were in his head.
As
He doesn't
Captain
kill anybody
America, he
anymore.
was still running around with a fucking machine gun.
That was for show. Those were rubber bullets. Oh my goodness. Bradford Hub says Batman has never beaten Captain America. Batman has never hands down beaten Deathstroke. I disagree with you there. Deathstroke's been taken out by Batman. He's been taken out by all the Teen Titans too. You guys are fools. Josh, you're with me, right? It's Batman and Nightwing, right? You know what I'm saying.
It would be. I'll just say it'll be an interesting battle. I love Nightwing, but
Man, what if it's a ladder match? You know what I'm saying?
if it's a ladder match, it's going to be Batman and Nightwing because
Yeah,
Nightwing's just like
he's an acrobat.
Are you
destroy him.
kidding? Winter Soldier just takes his arm off and bam, done.
If it's a ladder match, the Dudley boys just show up and beat everybody.
It's like you see what the Hardy Boys did. You imagine Dick Grayson, Nightwing in a ladder match?
Shawn
Unstoppable.
Michaels and Razor Ramon show up and beat the shit out of everyone there.
The problem you have is that both Winter Soldier and Captain America are super soldiers. All they have to do is land one punch and bones are breaking. Bones are breaking. So you can be a brilliant tactician, but at some point you got to make physical contact. So
Superman could atomize you if he hit you.
Well,
And
yeah,
Batman
exactly.
withstood the challenge and defeated him.
Exactly. So it comes down to guile, acrobatics, reflexes, and the tools on the utility belt kind of thing. But if Cap lands a right hook on Batman's
He's gonna have
jaw,
some Cap
that jaw
spray.
is coming off. That jaw is coming off. And I don't care how brilliant a tactician he is. If his jaw is off, he's not going anywhere.
I don't think Cap throws full fledged anyway. It's like Spider-Man. He's always at half power or something. He got the heart. Batman doesn't hold anything back. He'll torture Winter Soldier until he wins. You know what I mean? He's not afraid to do anything. Except for kill people, obviously, and
feel
use
more
guns, but
confident if it were. I'd feel more confident if it were Batman and Cassandra Cain. I'll put it that way.
Kenneth Dowling jumping back in. He says, if Winter Soldier doesn't take out Nightwing, then Captain America definitely will. I love Batman. I like Nightwing, but they are peak human Olympic athletes. Cap and Winter Soldier are super soldiers. They are superhuman. Bat and Nightwing can outsmart them, but eventually Cap and Winter Soldier win. Batman's been fighting super people for his entire career. That's no match for him.
He's been fighting super idiots.
Batman?
Yeah, it's literally the closest person to an actual intelligent is like Hugo Strange and Edward Nigma, and
Negative.
even then they're
He's fought Lex Luthor. He's pretty smart.
Bane.
Yeah.
Bane is I'm sorry, Bane is the only actually smart. Everyone else is either they're smart, they're fucking crazy.
Hey, you could be crazy and smart, but you also have Ra's al Ghul. You've got Lady Shiva. He's got plenty of people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know what? Batman can just pull up Winter Soldier's old tweets from whenever he was a Russian super soldier, and he
Get him canceled.
wins. Yep, he wins.
I think that's where your friendly neighborhood banker was going. He said Batman summons Pocahontas for the win. Man, that would not go over well on the Twitter sphere. We got Brian Borden. Forget about Batman versus Cap. I'd rather read the great team up by John Byrne, which will likely never be reprinted. That's sad, Joe. Don't even think of. You want to give it to me?
If you want it, I'll give it to you.
I think you should ship it to me. I don't want to pay for the shipping though.
If you want it, happy birthday. How about that?
I don't want your comic books. I'm just teasing you, man. But it's sad that they don't go and reprint that stuff, and it took what's happening with George Perez for them to even reprint the one story. So hopefully that stuff will come. Eventually, it has to, right? By gods be Gaia gods. We got a couple of other Batman solos fiction. Yeah, perhaps. We got a few other super chats. Callum Lyle says, I wrote her saying she doesn't want to be called Wonder Woman. Her name, not her surname, is her superhero name. She and Diana are both daughters of Zeus, just two different mothers. This is like an American tragedy, Joe. Newbie and Wonder Woman have different moms?
Ooh. It's we're getting a little Tennessee Williams here with
Zeus. Zeus was a professional football player and had a tendency of knocking up women.
My dad's got kids by multiple women. He's not a football player.
Guys, I've got the perfect pitch. Tom King writing a 12-issue maxi series of Zeus impregnating the DC universe.
Zeus impregnates the DC universe. That would be amazing.
And then he has.
Can you imagine him crying?
400 mommy. He has 900 mommy wives.
My sperm doesn't work unless I cry.
Yes.
Leo Store Production says no more derivatives, enough already.
Correct. Throw the rest of them into the sun.
Characters.
I have been saying this for a decade.
I'm with you on derivatives. Nobody stop using the same name. If you want a new superhero that has a similar power set, give him a new name, make him unique and whatnot, or at least as unique as you can. We have one more segment in this, or are we done, fellas? Do we want to talk about manga sales, the Devil's Reign spoiler, or the Batman?
Dealer's choice.
Well, let's talk about these manga sales. They were not very good for DC and Marvel. This is graphic novels only from the NPC book scan, which are actual sales to customers, and it covers the numbers that come in for 90% of the entire market. So these things are really, really solid numbers, but they do not include single issue comic books, obviously being sold on the direct market in comic book retail shops. But manga sales jumped 171%. Guess how much superhero graphic novel sales jumped, Josh?
How much, Wes?
2.3%.
Wow,
that's a lot less.
What growth?
And what was inflation during that period?
Ooh. Well, this is just units; it's not dollars.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, there's a weird discussion around all this stuff because you get people in comics that lump manga and everything together, but when you talk to people that read manga, especially people in their 20s and 30s, I can't tell you how many people it is when you talk to them. They're like, oh, I don't read comics. And then you're like, oh, well, what do you read? Chainsaw Man, Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia. And these are people, again, in their 20s and 30s who you'll send them comics or you'll talk to them about quote unquote mainstream comics. And they will do things like, oh man, I started reading it in the wrong way. Hold on, give me a sec. I gotta, flip it, read it back around. That's a real thing. And people act like that's not reality. That is reality. And acting like it isn't helping anybody.
What do you think, Gabe? You're obviously an enormous manga fan as well as a comic book fan. Are you surprised this is happening?
No, not at all. Not at all. The accessibility point of entry for new readers is very low with manga.
You know exactly where to start. You know where to exactly pick up. Here's an interesting point that probably not a lot of people talk about from one of the news reports that I think it was ICV2 had the manga sales as double. If you look at those trade graphic novel sales, or it's basically volumes. There's a lot of Demon Slayer on the top of that list. A lot of Demon Slayer on the top of that list. However, here's the interesting part. Demon Slayer has been over for a while. It's not like they're still going on. It's not like One Piece or Black Clover or anything like that, where there's still ongoing stories and you see people catching up. The story is finished. It's done. It's completely done. And so what's happening is, and it's been for that for a while. I think it concluded in 2019 or something like that. But it's been over for a while. It's not a recent finish. What's happening is but what happened is, new episodes of the anime are coming out for the next season, which is basically it's plot point exactly the same as the manga. And then they had the Manga Train movie, which was like in between the one big arc that finished up, and then it started into the second arc, which is again straight from the manga. And what happened is, you see a lot of people are like, wow, that looks really cool, that's really interesting, and they're buying the volumes to match where the story catches up from the animated version of the same story, even though the full story actually completed a couple years back. So what you're seeing is, when you hear Marvel and DC talking about synergies between, I want the movies to reflect what's happening in the comics, and I want the cartoon and what's on Disney Plus to reflect what's happening on the comics, none of that is really working. But if you look at what's happening in anime and manga, it's working exactly as it's supposed to. Is people who hadn't read it see the anime or see the movie version of the anime saying, oh, that looks really cool, I should read those volumes. Oh, and then I have to go backtrack it. So people will start like going back, and they'll get volume 1 and volume 2 and volume 3 to catch up where the anime is basically ending up, because the anime is way behind on where the manga print version actually finished. So you see people seeing the anime or seeing that movie, getting really interested in what's happening, and so they go back and buy the volumes. That's exactly how the synergy is supposed to work. So if DC and Marvel are want to try to learn the lessons or the business component and the logistics and the printing and the distribution lessons, that's exactly how it's supposed to work when it works correctly. So it's not like people are buying just a whole bunch of new manga of stuff that's coming out. They're buying stuff that from the print version's perspective is actually pretty old, but they're going back and they're getting it because they saw it in a different medium, in a different platform. They get really excited about it, and then they go back and they buy the volumes, and the volumes match exactly what they saw on the in the anime, both in the kind of the cartoon TV version and the movie version. And so when we're talking about synergy, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. And that's why when DC or Marvel are trying to do the same thing, the consistent top sellers for like a DC graphic novel, what is it? It's Watchmen, it's Batman Year One, it's the stuff that's been printed over and over and over again, but it's not anything that's recent or new. And that's, if anybody's going to take a lesson from that, it's not only that the sales are dominating, it's also the sales are dominating, but a large chunk of those top sellers are dominating because they're getting synergy out of the anime and the film versions of the manga that's already been out of print. And they're capitalizing on it.
You know what's crazy, Joe, is DC has a pretty good movie version of Under the Red Hood. It's a little bit different. It actually adds a scene in there that I think helps it out. But if you were a fan and you went in there and watching, you're like, wow, this Red Hood character is amazing. I really like what they're going through there. Like, there's not an immediate part to start out with. Like, you would have to go a long ways, like a decade or more before, just to see the death in the family. And like, where would you jump in to finish your story with Under the Red Hood?
Yeah, no, it's it's all over the place. It's difficult to pinpoint certain things. And for the most part, too, again, like there are some direct adaptations, like you were saying, with Under the Red Hood, but those are, some animated movies that don't quite get the same kind of play as a lot of these different anime. But yeah, there's no real good order that these books are in. They're out of print at weird times, or there's so many different formats. It's like, well, the soft cover is in print here, but the deluxe oversized hardcover is out of print, but the volume after this the deluxe hardcover is the only way to get it, and the trade's out of print. And then the thing after this, they did a fat trade, which has everything in it, but that's out of print. But there's a thinner trade that has most of the story. Like, it's insane when you look at this. And there's no uniformity. Manga tends to be better about it, and they tend to more reliably put things back in print. Like when you see a lot of manga where it's like, oh my God, like it's spiking up in price. Even with the paper shortage, it's like, you know what? If I can wait 6 to 8 months, I know it's going to be back in print. With some of the stuff at Marvel and DC, it's like, oh, you know, the Question Volume 1 from Denny O'Neil is out of print. Is it coming back in print? No. Like,
well, plus you got the Shonen Jump app, which is $2, and it'll fill in all of your gaps if you can't actually get the print comics. Because we are in a manga shortage right now, and that's another thing that works hand in hand. Josh, like, provides the synergy with the interest in the title. Is you maybe you get into the anime, you find the manga, there's a hole, you pay your $2 for your Shonen Jump, you get in there. Well, you've already paid for the Shonen Jump app, it was almost free, and maybe you start reading some new manga. You already know the format now, and it really just kind of builds on itself.
Absolutely. I think in general, publishers have to look at quality and I guess price of what you're getting, and sometimes that quality includes quantity. Like, you're paying $2.99 a month for Shonen Jump, and you get this vast array of books for $2.99 a month. Meanwhile, you're paying $4.99 plus for a 20-page comic that barely tells a story every single month for that one comic. Like, when you start comparing there, you're better. Your money is better spent, and your time is better spent going the Shonen Jump route. And I think that's something that publishers have to look into to kind of understand why they're losing.
Yeah, if they wanted, if DC and Marvel wanted to dispel the whole how do we compete, what they could, some people may not like that, is just create volumes similar with the same kind of numbering system and everything else for any of the characters that they want, and just do black and white ash can versions. Make it cheaper, so that way you can cut down on the expense of coloring and everything else, so that way it's affordable and you're not killing yourself on the margins.
They were called essentials.
Yeah, just so you could just do just that, so that if anybody just wanted to know more about the characters, wanted to know more about the story, and they wanted a quick, easy, relatively inexpensive way to catch up on a character, they go into the same numbering system, everything, just go in and go, here's volume 1, here's Red Hood, volume 1, volume 2, and 3, all the collected works, just use the black and white ash cans, and then you could just do your thing, and that would be it.
They had Marvel and DC both had their essentials line that were just the black and white ones. Those worked very, very well up through the 80s and into most of the 90s. Problem is, they cannot function today because none of the stories are linear. All of them are crossovers, events, relaunches. Nothing is, you can't just read from issue 100 to issue 200 of Spider-Man now. Now you have 14 events that happened, 6 tie-ins with other books. They don't make any sense. And if you already are reading the other book, now you're paying, people get pissed off because they have they're paying twice for the same story because, well, it was included in this one and now it's included in the other one that I want to read, but I already bought that one. Their event system has made it almost impossible to collect their own books.
Well, don't even look at someone as tenured as Spider-Man. Look at Red Hood. Look at Jason Todd. He's been back for 10, maybe 15 years. And the different iterations of him since then, like, they don't line up. You've got him coming back for Under the Red Hood, and then you pretty much move into Grant Morrison's Red Hood, which is a completely different acting character. And then you go into New 52, and he's got his Outlaws with Roy and Starfire. And then you have Rebirth Red Hood. They're all just distinctly different in their own ways that it doesn't line up.
All right, so it's time. We're going to have to wrap this up. We do have one more question. This is for Josh. I hope you don't take too much water in there. Kenneth wants to know, I know you said you aren't a fan of Batman using suits, but if he is fighting OP characters like Superman, Darkseid, he needs an advantage. If Batman, Nightwing have suits, they win. I'm done.
Yeah, I will clarify. My issue with Batman using suits is it's become the go-to for so many writers, and they use it so frequently that he might as well just be Iron Man now.
There you go. Mic drop on you, Kenneth. I think Josh agrees with you. Let's get into some comic book recommendations. It was an interesting week. We had some decent comic books come out. We had a couple of bad ones. Doc and I are going to talk about those on Monday. Joe, what are you recommending this week?
You know what? I really liked the Radio Spaceman from Dark Horse. That was good.
Mike Mignola?
Yeah, Mike Mignola. He's just the writer. The art is very good and akin to the kind of thing you'd expect from Mike, but I like that. I also liked what was it? The Thing #5. There's a big twist in it that makes a lot of the things that I think people were annoyed about in earlier issues completely make sense. But yeah, I'll just go with those two for now.
That none of the characters sounded like human beings. Does it ever explain that part?
Yes, it is explained.
Okay.
Yep.
Gabe sent me a panel where I guess Ben Grimm and Death.
Well, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Oh. You sent it out on Twitter, man. It's not like you didn't share it with other people.
Nobody knows who I am, so that's different.
Well, you got a point. There's probably a few people here. So those are his recommendations. What do you recommend, Gabe?
I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm recommending Batman Killing Time #1.
Oh, yeah.
I liked it. For right, wrong, or indifferent, I know it's Tom King, but I liked it. I thought it was well put together. The art is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. The art is just gorgeous on that book. There are some, minor kind of, did you really need to do that? Did you need to? But those were nitpicks. And as far as a good start to a good, it wasn't as good as Lemire's Robin and Batman start, but it was up there. So, I mean, if we're looking for DC Marvel type stuff, I would go with Batman Killing Time #1. Now, I fully expect by issue 3 or 4, King's going to yank the rug on me, and I'm going to curse his name loudly. But as far as first issue start goes, it was very good.
So my question is, why then? It's like trying candy corn. It's never good. We always think it might be this time, but it always ends up the shittiest taste you've ever had in your mouth.
The way we look at comic reviews is comic reviews are a public service. It is our duty and responsibility to give every first issue and every issue after that a fair shake. Mm-hmm. Right, wrong, or different. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So even though King has a rep that he's earned, it's an earned rep. It's not like we're treating him unfairly. He earned that rep. Every first issue, and despite some kind of foibles and ups and downs with Human Target for the most part has been pretty good. Now, there has been some rough spots in there, but so there's always an opportunity to do better.
All right, Josh, what do you recommend this week?
So the last time I was on, I recommended 3 Batman trades that were influences for the Batman. I'm going to recommend 3 more Batman trades because I don't really have a ton of new comics. And I'm with Gabe. Batman Killing Time, it's worth it. Hope for the best, pray for the best, and hopefully we'll get more good stuff. But this time I've got 3. So if you watch the Batman and you want to kind of read some comics that played into it, you got Batman Earth 1 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. You've got Batman 0 Year by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and Batman Imposter by Mattson Tomlinson and Andrea Sorrentino. And Mattson wrote the script for the Batman. So all 3 solid books. There's influences there in the movie. Check it out.
All right, Doc, what do you recommend this week? How about X-Men #9?
I'm going to give that a tepid recommendation. About half the book was pretty good. The other half was a little kind of meandering and boring. But I am going to recommend the Magic Order #5 because basically I recommend anything Mark Miller does, and because it always ends up pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's actually the Magic Order 2 #5. And I am going to recommend ASM. It was, well, actually, you know what? No, I'm not recommending this one. I didn't like this issue of ASM. I got it confused with the last couple of issues that were pretty okay, but then now Kelly Thompson's back and it went to fucking shit again.
Is that where she went? She went back with the Land Shark again?
I don't remember if the Land Shark was in this one. It's fucking Kelly Thompson is obnoxious.
It was
All
supposed
right,
to be a
buddy.
really big moment, and she went jokey with it. And it was just
Yeah.
All right, fellas, let's wrap this up.
and-
And needs to eat.
Night.
yeah, stop talking, Josh.
It's 1:30 in the morning.
Moon Knight was pretty all right.
He's fine.
I'm with you. I like that Moon Knight series. This wasn't the best issue so far. I personally am going to be recommending you go to Iconic Comics, or at least their Kickstarter and Indiegogo campaigns right now. You've got the latest volume of Common America on Kickstarter, and you've got Arc Athena Volume 2 on Indiegogo. Definitely support those great creators, friends of the channel. We've got a couple of super chats in here. Common Sense, Rogue Sun, and Supermassive Universe. They're a good example. There are great comic books out there. They shouldn't be overshadowed by bad comics. If you like Batman Beyond, there's a good chance you might like Rogue Sun. I might be talking about that in the best comic books of the week in the recommendations tomorrow. Just a little spoiler there. Kenneth Dowling says Batman 121, Devil's Reign 4, and Black Panther number 4. Josh, thanks for setting me straight. You're the man. Wes, you and the panel are awesome. Have a great weekend. You have a great weekend as well. Thank you so much
thanks
for
so much.
the
You too,
recommendations.
I am awesome. Thank you very much.
He wasn't talking to you. No, he would have. He knows your name. If he wanted to say Doc, he would have said Doc. So I definitely want to say thank you very much to everybody. We got a little off topic there a couple times, but we had a good conversation. Definitely come back next weekend for the next edition of the Comics Aficionados. Had a lot of fun, and hope you all have a good weekend.